This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 29. I'm your host, Steve, at Fantasy Ladder. This podcast is brought to you by the IDP Guys Podcast Network. So, welcome back once again, my fantasy football friends and family. Let's climb the ladder of fantasy football together. So today's episode, we're going to be covering all of the matchups for Week 5, and then get into some listener start sit questions with a very special guest who we'll bring on in just a moment. A little bit of housekeeping off the top. Just wanted to remind you all to please subscribe to the IDP Guys newsletter. That will come into your inbox every Wednesday morning, full of fantastic information, as well as the YouTube channel and on all your podcast hosting services, Apple, Spotify. Follow the IDP Guys for this show as well as all the other great shows that will come out multiple times a week. So be on the lookout for that. Would encourage you to subscribe. Last thing, someone in the IDP Guys family was hit really hard by Hurricane Ian. Her name is Faith. She's an editor for the website. So there is actually a GoFundMe that was started. Her house was destroyed by the hurricane as she lives in Southwest Florida there. She's okay. She was able to get out of the area, but her house was essentially destroyed by the hurricane. So in the link, the link for that GoFundMe will be in the episode description. So please check that out, read about the story, and then donate if you are able to. That would be phenomenal. Then after you're done giving to that great cause, I just want to remind you about BetUS. So I am an affiliate for that website, and with my referral link, there's a very special. Um, there's a very special deal that you get right now. So if you deposit $100, you will get back an extra $150 to play with when you use my link. So if you are interested in that, please let me know. However, that's enough of the housekeeping for now. We're going to bring on our very special guest. He is a writer for IBT Media, which is, of course, In Between Media. We're big fans of In Between Media here, the Fantasy Ladder podcast. He writes a column called The Hard Bargain for IBT Media, and here he is. You can find him on Twitter at Dave Fantasy. So, Dave, how you doing?
Great, Steve. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here on a nice evening to talk about football.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm just generally curious here. Just gonna do a little like football speed dating here with you.
Okay.
We're just gonna go through some quick questions here, and then I want to hear some other questions about how you are handling the fantasy football season this year. So, just curious now, what is your favorite NFL team?
The Pittsburgh Steelers, since I was
Pittsburgh
4 years
Steelers.
old. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, is your favorite college team the Pitt Panthers? I would take it.
I've been a fan of the Pitt Panthers since I was probably in my early adolescence, about 12 years old. I don't know that I really knew there was a University of Pittsburgh for a little while. Once I
Sure,
kind of
sure.
realized there was one, I started rooting for them. Although for those folks who know me very well, I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm a graduate of Boise State University, and as a proud alum, that's my primary interest when it comes to college football. Boise State.
Perfect. I love that. Yeah, it's always such a fun team to like play with in like NCAA football because they got that awesome field and I just think like it's just like really cool like jerseys and helmets and stuff too. So that's an awesome. I always like watching them play. I always like low key root for them during like bowl season and stuff. So that's awesome. Very cool, very cool. And for a while there, Kenny Pickett was your avatar on Twitter. So it has changed, of course. And now it's just the picture of your very, very delightful beard and everything else. But so I figured, well, there's a possibility he's a Steelers fan. Obviously, he's a Kenny Pickett fan enough to have him to be his avatar, of course. But and we'll
Yes,
touch on
sir.
that in a little bit here, as he'll be slated as the starter for the Steelers officially now. So. But that's really cool. Appreciate you coming on. So I'm just curious. How many leagues are you playing in this year?
I am in 3 redraft leagues.
Okay.
Six, like 3 true redraft leagues, 6 dynasty leagues, and then 3 kind of unique leagues. I am in Scottish Bowl 12.
Nice.
I am participating in the Baby Bowl. Rob
Oh
Norton
yeah,
puts it on. And
absolutely.
I'm also in a guillotine league. I'm sure you're
Okay,
familiar with guillotine leagues. So I'm playing one of those this year too. So,
that's
uh,
awesome. So that's
so yeah, I've got
12
a few,
leagues. That's a pretty
right?
good amount. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
12,
a pretty
12
healthy
overall.
amount. Yeah,
And I
for
got
sure.
in my dynasty leagues, 2 of them are IDP. So I
Okay.
get into the IDP guys a little bit, and I've got one Harry Potter themed league, which actually impacts the actual play. There are Harry Potter related things that can impact your scoring. And then
Wow.
I've got a Seinfeld themed league where there's no real, it doesn't change anything about the scoring, but it's everybody's team name is Seinfeld related. My team is called the Moops.
Oh, there you go.
And so, it's a fun league just for, 'cause if you like Seinfeld, we just kind
Oh
of goof
yeah, for
around with
sure,
it.
for sure. Yeah, I'm in a couple of themed leagues. The one is like Marvel versus like The Office. So like one division is all like Marvel themed teams, and the other division is all like The Office themed. But that's
Okay.
awesome. I know on MFL, like on like my fantasy league, you can really incorporate a lot of like unique like scoring systems and stuff. So I guess that's where the Harry Potter stuff will come into play a little bit there. Maybe
It's
I'm not sure, but
it's imaginative. But they got a few things in there with the Deathly Hallows. You can use the Sorcerer's Stone and things like that,
oh
to
wow, okay.
boost your team a little bit.
That's
So,
awesome. Very cool. No, so I think that's a very healthy amount of leagues. I'm in 27. All of them are like lineup setting leagues. So I don't do any best balls. I might consider it next year. That the more I play in these leagues, not to make these like last minute adjustments, like with like Alvin Kamara last year or last week. It
right.
makes me just want to do more and more best balls. That's just like a free advertisement for like underdog right there. Like you don't need to
100%.
worry about the late out with like Alvin Kamara because your lineup is just what it is. But either way, I do enjoy like the lineup setting, but like 27 leagues, I just want to like pull my hair out someday. So I might need to cut back. I may need to cut back next year. We'll see if there's any of these like dynasty leagues I may be able to escape. I'm not sure, but I do enjoy it. So 12 leagues. So like, what's your Sunday morning routine like? Do you kind of tinker your lineups throughout the week, or do you could just kind of wait until like the last like 20 minutes before like the early slate of games, or what's that like for you?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a tinkerer. I would say my Sunday morning routine really begins on Saturday night uh, because I go through every lineup, and set basically what I think I'm going to go with, the following day.
Mhm.
Obviously, if there's an unexpected player who's inactive or something like that, or players that, even maybe we are expecting to be inactive, you have to address all those issues. But basically, yeah, every Saturday night, I make sure I have my lineups tentatively set so that
Yeah.
Sunday morning is not a complete madhouse for me. I'm just basically reviewing and making sure there's no changes I have to make. Although, unless I really want somebody on Thursday night, that Baby Bowl lineup that you set every week, I usually do that on Sunday morning, just kind of the whole thing on Sunday morning, figuring out who I'm most excited for in that particular week. And I'm doing
Yeah.
okay in that league. I'm not threatening to win it, but I'm doing all right. I'm having some good, turnouts. So
That's good. Yeah. I mean, you always want to, in like a charity league like that, it's good to know that like what you're playing for is something much bigger than yourself, right? Like Scott
for sure,
Fishbowl. So you
for
don't
sure,
need to like sweat these things out, but like you still have like your pride of like wanting to win. But
right?
but in a league like that, it is just all for like the charities. At least the majority is, so it kind of eases the decision making to a certain degree. But I mean, you still want to demonstrate the right way of approaching each matchup and setting the best lineup. But yeah, because I
Yes, I
think that
just
one
got
has like funky. I think that one has like funky rules, right? Where you can only play certain guys certain weeks, or you can only play them
You can
or
only
something like
play
that.
each player 1 week. So you have to set a
Oh,
7-player
got it.
lineup each week, and
Wow.
you
Okay.
have to pick Aaron Rodgers on his best week, for example. It's just a random one or whatever. But
Yeah.
uh, a couple of them, throughout the season, I think I've really hit on. I hit on Nick Chubb's big week. I played T.J. Hawkinson this past week in week 4, so
Jeez. There you go. Yeah.
that was a good call.
Yeah, like the stars kind of align there, right? With all the
Yeah,
missing players, and well, I mean, it's still going to be high scoring, basically, and boom, there you go. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It
Great
felt
call.
like they needed a guy to step up to be the playmaker, and and he did. I talked about it. I was on a show with our friend IDP Iggy on Sunday, and I talked about it
Oh,
there.
perfect.
And so that made me feel cool. I talked about it, and then it really happened. Not not just really happened, but like to an extreme extent.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely. Oh, yeah.
this was beyond my wildest imagination. But I thought he was going to have a good game. I didn't think he was going to have an all-time game.
Well, that's great. And no, so that just sets the stage for the rest of the program here tonight, where we will offer our advice for each of the matchups. But uh, I haven't exactly calculated the hit rate of all the advice that has been given on this show. But either way, that Dave absolutely knows what he's talking about there. So that's fantastic. So basically, we're just going to recap a little bit of what happened in week 4. Like, really, we are just kind of focusing on the week ahead, but just I think it's still helpful to touch on some of the big takeaways from week 4. What were some of your biggest takeaways from week 4? It could be either real life related or fantasy related.
All right. Well, I mean, most of them are fantasy related. My takes generally tend to
Yeah,
be. I would say one of my big takeaways is Jared Goff. It's related to the T.J. Hawkinson thing we were just talking about. Even without his, primary weapons,
right.
it was wild and not always comfortable. I mean, obviously that game was a very chaotic game. I know a lot of Detroit Lions fans were talking about this is the last straw, during the game, and the way it came out was just wild. But my daughter, I have twin 7-year-old daughters, and they're fantasy enthusiasts themselves. My daughter decided this was the week she wanted to get Jared Goff into the lineup for the first time. And although he's had a couple of good fantasy weeks before, but man, this was the right time to do it. She
That's awesome.
paid off for her. So that's one of my big takes. DK Metcalf and that receiving average, holy crow. 149 yards on just 7 receptions. That's 21.3 yards per catch. He had a big day. He had a big
Yeah.
day. On the kind of downside, I was a little bit worried about Jonathan Taylor. He did not look good. I mean, he just kept getting bottled up every time, even though they kept giving him the rock. I mean, 20 carries is still good, but
Right.
only 42 yards is discouraging. And then the fumble, of course, he's been a little bit perplexing for fantasy owners. I think, he hasn't gotten 100 yards since week 1, right? And no TDs since week 1, I think, too, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right. Off top of my head. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that whole situation has been extremely rocky. Where I thought that would have been one of the more steady, you know, spots across the league. Like you think, oh well, the
and I
offense
feel
is
like they all
surely
felt that
yeah,
way.
like surely the offense is going to be better with like Matt Ryan in there rather than Carson Wentz, and they're just going to force feed JT and Michael Pittman's have a big like, and Pittman has been great, but I mean, like you think like, well, that defense is just going to keep them steady, in like good situations, and yeah, it has just been very rocky, to say the least. And then of course. Taylor is not going to be suiting up on Thursday nights. That just is a whole another thing to think about. You think, oh well, perfect. I got my stud RB on a short week in a Thursday game where sometimes like the running backs can be a little bit more utilized, and nope. All of a sudden, he's not. Well, I mean, he hurt his ankle, but and it's bad enough that they're not gonna send him out on the short week.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that that's a fantastic takeaway because it's kind of like he's been kind of an interesting um, trade target at this point. Like just been a disappointing start. Now he's missing Thursday night. Could I get him for something? And I don't know. I just think overall it's not as rosy as what it was going in. So
Great.
um, I don't know. It's like you still love the talent. You know what he can. I mean, all it takes is one play, and he'll make his fantasy day. He's kind of like Saquon Barkley in that way. He can just have
Oh
like
yeah.
one massive play, and that's it. Then the volume on top of that is phenomenal. But not if it's going like how it was last week. It's very concerning. So I think that's a really good point to bring up. And yeah, I do like the DK Metcalf. Uh, Recognition as well because I did not think Geno Smith was going to be playing to the level that he has been playing. So that has been
He's
a really
impressive so
tremendous
far.
thing
Yeah.
to see as well. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So just gonna touch on some of those other players that kind of stood out to me. Some of the big studs of Week 4, of course, included Josh Jacobs, who had 144 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, added on 5 catches and 31 yards through the air. T.J. Hawkinson, as you had discussed, 8 catches on 12 targets, 179 yards and 2 touchdowns. Awesome to see that. And then Austin Eckler had a what's that?
I was just going to say, I saw that Davis Maddock had tweeted. In fact, I used it in my article on 4 for 4. That was the 7th highest PPR total ever by a tight end, what TJ Hawkinson did on Sunday.
Holy cow. Well, there you go. Sheesh. I mean, it seemed like pretty remarkable, but I mean, I figured, well, maybe like Kelsey has done something better than that, but I guess not, or like Antonio Gates or something like back in the day. But wow,
It was
that's
truly
really
an
impressive.
all-time performance, yeah, for sure.
Wow, 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 wow. Then you had Austin Eckler, who finally demonstrated what he's able to do there. 6 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown with 60 yards on the ground and 2 additional touchdowns. So when he's being drafted as like a top half of the first round running back, that's what you're expecting. Like not week in, week out, but more often than not, that's what you're hoping for. And just has been below expectation to this point. So that was awesome to see. And
Yeah,
then
no,
Mike
no
Evans had
touchdowns
the
in the first 3 weeks. 3 touchdowns in week 4. How do you plan for this? I don't even know.
no, it's nuts. It's nuts. But that's why you drafted him because you know that he is capable of that. So that was like a real like monkey off the back of like a lot of GMs here, who are
Yes.
like really sweating out like what do I do with Eckler. But I think pretty comfortable holding him now, or buying him. If you want to take a trade for him, who knows? Mike Evans caught 8 passes on 10 targets for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns, coming back from his missed game due to suspension. So very happy to see him back in his old form. Some duds of the week. So going on the opposite side now, Deontay Johnson, what was a pretty notable one for me. Only 4 targets, 2 catches, 11 yards. Awful. Drake London, 2 catches on 7 targets, 17 yards. Maybe that's more of like a Marcus Mariota issue. At least last
That's
week.
that's his
Yeah,
worst week so far of his rookie season, I mean,
that's right.
he's been off to a decent start, So pretty good
Yeah,
start,
I
really.
mean, it kind of that one kind of stands out to me because he was kind of like, well, he's probably a flex play, and then like going into week 1, then week 2, week 3, oh, you got to start him, then week 4, just a really disappointing effort. So, yeah, so we don't like to see that. And then James Robinson got bottled up there in Philly, only 8 rushing attempts for 29 yards in the yucky and wet game there against the Eagles. Some bounce back games. We got Justin Jefferson caught 10 of 13 targets for 147 yards, like back to his old form after the last 2 weeks that have been well below expectation, and he had a rushing touchdown in there as well.
Yeah.
Was happy to see J.K. Dobbins get a 24.5 point fantasy outing on only 50% of the snaps. So still coming back from that knee injury that kept him out all year, but you're very encouraged if you have Dobbins on your rosters. And then of
The
course
goal line
Rashad
play.
Penny. Oh, the goal line.
The goal
That's
line
right.
work
It
was,
was
was outstanding. It's nice to see that.
he got the short touchdown rush and the short touchdown catch,
Yeah.
which I mean, normally that's like Mark Andrews territory. That's Lamar Jackson taking himself territory. So that was really great to see. Hopefully, he can keep that kind of a role. But ultimately, we just want him on the field more. So we want that 50% snap share to increase as
Right.
time goes on here. And then Rashad Penny had the big blow up game, 33 points against the Detroit Lions. So definitely a good spot to have him in. And if you started him, you were rewarded, even though he's been a little shaky as well. So we'd like to see that. Now, of course, in week 4, there were some pretty bad injuries. Of course, we'll start with Javonte Williams. Big sad face there. Tore his ACL and LCL damage. So he's done for the season and probably early into next year already. I mean, it's hard to tell. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves with that, but it's just a devastating loss for him, obviously, but also for the Broncos and for fantasy football. You just hate when stars of the game go down, especially a guy like him who just has all this promise. So we hate that. Then Cordero Patterson, he will end up on IR, being out at least 4 weeks. And then Tua had the second week in a row concussion, and just the madness that has transpired there in Miami. Hopefully, he doesn't get rushed back. Hopefully he's just okay. We just want these guys to be okay. And
it's a
these
straight up
head
scary
injuries.
story.
That's
I
right.
mean, the doctor ended up getting fired by the Players Association.
Right.
He exhibited symptoms in both games that they, term as no-go symptoms, which mean like there's no way you're supposed to be able to get back on the field if you've exhibited that symptom in that game. Which the woozy stagger in the first game was one, and then the clenched fingers, what they call the fencing syndrome, was. I read a little bit about that after I heard what people were calling it, the fencing syndrome, because I wanted to understand that. But that's kind of scary. I mean, that is basically a symptom of a fairly significant brain injury almost all the time. So that it kind of just gives me concern for his overall health as a human being. Have nothing to do with football. I'm just worried, is he well?
That's right. Yeah, it's really kind of sobering, to kind of see something like that happen, and then then these guys have to go back out there and just finish the game. And this was late in the first half. You got to still have the whole another half of football. I can't imagine it's easy to do that.
Watching one of your teammates, one of your someone who's close to you, be carted off, on a stretcher, and with that kind of situation, how do you just go about okay, let's get right back into the game? That's got to be difficult, for anybody.
Absolutely.
You could see it on the face of Jalen Waddle, as they were college teammates.
Yeah.
He was really he looked pretty shook up by just what he saw. So.
Yeah, no, it's just a good reminder that we enjoy football, we love fantasy football, but there is just so much more to it than just the silly nonsense that we care about. You know what I mean?
It's true.
So it's so you just hate to see that kind of thing, but you just want these guys to be all right, because we do become fans of them, and now we just have to care about them more than just football players, which is what they are initially to us. But yeah, it's human first and entertainer second. You know what I mean? It's just that's horrible. Hate to see that. On to more positive news. Your boy Kenny Pickett is now been named the official starter for the Steelers. My only question, and maybe you can touch on this a little bit, is I'm just very curious how he will fare, against this really rough upcoming schedule. So week 5, he's at Buffalo. Week 6, he's home against Tampa Bay. Then he's at Miami, then at Philadelphia. Getting through that stretch, what are your expectations there for Pickett?
It's a daunting stretch of the schedule. I mean, there's no way around that. I mean, these are some of the better defenses in the entire league that he's going to be facing in the next couple of weeks. If they could get through it at 2-2, I'd be ecstatic. I mean, that would make me, as a Steelers fan, just feel like I'm really believing in something right now. I mean, the thing just about Kenny Pickett himself, the things that I really love about him is I know that this is such a cliche and people hate hearing this thing, but he's got that moxie, I mean, he's got a winner's mentality when he's out there, and you could kind of see it on the field on Sunday. Yes, he had his mistakes. He threw some interceptions. A couple of those were off his teammates' hands, and one of them was, a desperation Hail Mary at the end. You can't really put the 100% of the blame on him for any one of those 3 interceptions, but but either way, he's got to find a way to get it to his teammates. They were interceptions, and that that's a problem. But
no, I mean, I don't think it's that silly of a thing to bring up. Like, players' body language and their command of the offense. I mean, you just see a lot of these quarterbacks that just look like dead fish out there. You know what I mean?
right.
So if you have a guy who you can really rally behind, and if he can really be if he can demonstrate good um like leadership qualities and really elevate the entire just mindset of the offense, like it just was really uninspiring football with Mitch Trubisky. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't think it's silly. I don't think it's like a overrated thing. I really think that really does go a long way for sure, 100%.
Yeah, it felt like there was a level of confidence that came onto the field with him. A level
That's
of
right.
confidence for the whole offense. That came onto the field with him. I mean, I'll tell you 100% that George Pickens was excited to see him out there. The way that he was looking for Pickens and got him involved in the game, I can tell you that George Pickens was excited Kenny Pickett was on the field. But yeah, I feel like the team is comfortable with him as the starting quarterback. They feel like they can win with him. Now we're gonna have to see if they will win with him.
That's
But
right. Yeah.
but believing you can do it is the first step in doing it. So I mean, the feeling that there is some confidence in this offense now after being very lackluster through most of the season to date. That's encouraging as a fan, and as a fan of University of Pittsburgh. I've been rooting for Kenny Pickett for several years, so it feels good when your team drafts a guy that you already rooted for, a guy that you wanted to see succeed anyway. And I'm all in. I kind of believe in Kenny Pickett. I know there's a lot of doubters, but I think he's going to be better than most people expect. I think he's going to be a solid starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, after the first few weeks, so they got a bye week, and then New Orleans and a couple kind of iffy ones, but then the week 13 on, I don't want to call it. It's never cupcake, you know what I mean? But for fantasy purposes, it's going to be way easier compared to the first
Everything's
4
more
weeks here.
favorable.
So, I think just he gets through these 4 weeks, minimizes his mistakes, and just kind of builds off of what he did against the Jets. I think 2-2 would be very good. But yeah, it's just a kind of brutal stretch to begin
Right.
your career with. But oh
Yeah, I mean,
man,
realistically, they could go 0-4 through those games, and I wouldn't be shocked. I'm
right.
trying to see the optimistic side of it. If they can split them, that's perfect. We're playing some of the hardest teams. I mean, there's a good chance that the Super Bowl champion is in one of those 4 teams. I
That's right.
mean,
Yeah.
these are some of the best teams in the league. So,
Right.
uh, yeah, I would if he can win even 2 of those, that feels like a victory going forward. And a guy that
Oh, yeah. That'd be huge.
the whole city will rally around if that happens.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was definitely someone who was a big riser for me. Like in my dynasty leagues, I was able to get him in a number of um rookie drafts. In some cases I was pretty aggressive in trading up to snag him in spots where I felt I needed a quarterback. So yeah, I have a pretty good amount of Kenny Pickett. So I definitely have some rooting interest there, just for the fantasy side of things. But yeah, I mean, you just want the old Steelers offense back. Like they have all these great weapons there, and if he can bring a little bit more out of them than what Trubisky was able to, I think it would be more enjoyable overall, just from a pure football standpoint. But yeah, so we got our eyes on Kenny Pickett for sure. Then the last little note about Week 4, the Philadelphia Eagles, my Philadelphia Eagles, very excited to say that they remain the only undefeated team at this time. But I don't want to get too excitable or too ahead of myself. But it is still a fun fun time of the season thus far. So I'm going to enjoy it while it's here.
One
But
of my favorite things about this start for the Eagles and for Philadelphia fans in general is the trepidation, from the Eagles fans. Like that, I don't want to get too excited about this, because y'all have been hurt before. I get it, but
that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of crazy because it's fairly universal about Eagles fans. They're like, I'm trying not to get too, too up there. I'm not an Eagles fan personally. I like watching the Eagles team that they've got right now. I'm a big Jalen Hurts guy, and in fact, I did a hot take article. Seth in between media asked us for some hot takes, and one of my hot takes was Jalen Hurts is QB1 this year. And,
there you go.
It's off to a reasonable start actually. So, but yeah, I felt like he had everything he needed in place to take a huge jump. Especially with the addition of A.J. Brown, but not exclusively with the addition of A.J. Brown. That's a solid offensive line in front of him. They've got a running game that even if it is made up of, a three-headed monster or whatever, they get the job done. And especially, he can get the job done on the ground. And Devonta Smith, now not having to attract the number one corner every week is a huge advantage for him, Dallas Goddard. Obviously, there's a lot to like about that offense, and which is why I felt like he had a really good chance to, move forward this year. And yeah, I feel good about the Eagles. I kind of think you Eagles fans are being a little bit too cautious, but I think they've got a really good. That defense is pretty good too. I think they've got a good chance to go places this year. So
yeah, it's just when that overconfidence comes out, that's when the rug gets pulled out. So we just want to. I can't speak for every fan, but for myself, just being a general Philadelphia fan, just the expectation management is just so critical to your enjoyment of the season and of the game. But so far so good. So I just had to throw that in there because I am a Eagles fan. But we are now going to be going through the entire Week 5 slate, just kind of going over which players that we think should be started, which players we think should be sat, and there could be some like in between. Like last year for the IDP guys, I wrote a start sit column where I sort of classified each of the players into three categories. I went players you trust, players you can start if you must, and then players who I think are going to be busts. So
very clever. I like it.
In the if you must category, that could be like some of these leagues we play in where there's like multiple flex leagues. So if it's like a really deep multiple flex type of a league, that's where you could kind of throw them in there. But if we're talking about like just two running back, two wide receiver, one flex, probably not going to be looking at them there. So there's a little bit of nuance with that. It's I hate the black and white of everything these days, but because there is a lot of nuance to a lot of things. So we're just going to go through it however we're able to here. We don't have to stick to that, but that's just how I think about it sometimes. So, all right.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
For sure. So starting off, so the order we're going to go in here are the primetime games. We got Thursday Night Football, the Sunday London game, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. Then we'll do some listener questions and then go through all of the Sunday games that are remaining. So let's just kick things off with the Indianapolis Colts at the Denver Broncos on Thursday night. Big headline here is that there's no Jonathan Taylor. We kind of touched on that a little bit ago. Matt Ryan, I think, could still be implemented as a super flex. He's been really up and down, so that still is kind of a tough call, even as a super flex. Michael Pittman, obviously you're starting him as far as I'm concerned. Mo Alley Cox is kind of an interesting tight end play. Really kind of an if you must, though, just because tight end is just so horrifically disgusting this season. Unless you have like Travis Kelce and just don't need to worry about a thing. It's just very up and down, like these big like swings of, or like Mark Andrews. He's another one where you just are never going to not play. But a lot of disappointment, right? Like Darren Waller, what was very disappointing. George Kittle just isn't quite what we are thinking. And of course, Kyle Pitts, So I think Mo Alley Cox is kind of an interesting one, but I think the real question mark is with this backfield. So can we trust Nahim Heinz as like an RB2? Because it's kind of is kind of iffy if you want to put a Thursday night player in your flex. Even though Heinz, I think, does fit that mold to a certain degree, you may need to get him up into your RB2. What did you do? Do you have any thoughts on the Colts offense outside of Pittman? Is there anyone that you would feel supremely confident starting?
I do kind of like Himes in this lineup, or I mean in this matchup rather, because we know there's not going to be any Jonathan Taylor, and I think they're going to get away from trying to run the ball as much as they otherwise would. I think that we'll probably see Matt Ryan putting the ball in the air, and I think kind of the game script will dictate that, because I do expect the Broncos to take the lead early and have the Colts be kind of trying to play catch up most of the time. But yeah, I mean, one of the things, I mean, not specifically related to the Colts, but just this feels like a game where everybody's hurt. That's what I wrote down in my notes. I'm like, who's healthy in this one? I mean, there are so many injuries. So I think that's going to play a huge role in the outcome of this game, is all the players that are missing with injury. Each team's starting tailback, obviously, starting running back, obviously.
That's right. Yeah.
Shaquille Leonard is going to miss this game, and he's a pretty significant force on that Colts defense. So, I mean, it's weird to say it, but I feel real confident about the Broncos in this one. I feel like they're definitely going to win this game.
Yeah, no, I completely forgot to mention about Javonte Williams there. I mean, I mentioned him a little while ago, obviously, but so no Taylor and no Javonte Williams on the rest of the Broncos offense. You got Russell Wilson, who again has been a little bit up and down. I think you can still use him as a super flex option. Melvin Gordon. What's your take on the Melvin Gordon and Michael Boone situation there? Do you think Boone is just going to kind of, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it got a lot messier today with the Latavius Murray signing. And actually, that's one of my long shot little moves. If you like to do player props and stuff, Latavius Murray is an anytime touchdown scorer is a fun one this week.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think he might get some goal line work, So I think he's got a decent chance to do that. But I don't know, I mean, it feels like it should be Melvin Gordon with the largest share of the work in the backfield.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you that all three players are going to get their chances to touch the ball. But I think that, Melvin Gordon should get the most work, but the ball security issues, they have to be a concern, right? We can't ignore that, I mean, he's fumbled the ball 5 times in his last 44 carries. That's a lot of fumbles, So
yeah, it's really
he can't get that under control. If he can't get that under control, he might not end up with the largest share of that workload. So
yeah, it's it seems like just so simple, just slot him in, but there are legitimate concerns. Like you said, like is the coaching staff really going to even trust him to give him more than however much of touches a game? So it actually it might be like a fool's gold situation if you were just gonna just blindly throw him in. But I think there are reasons to start him and then reasons to be a little iffy. So he might be like an if you must for me. I think if Judy and Cortland Sutton are healthy, I would feel comfortable starting them in this matchup. I think Judy is currently questionable, so just keep an eye on that, obviously, leading up to kickoff. But I definitely think Cortland Sutton is a full go. Start him where you got him.
Oh, yeah. I feel really good about the wide receivers in this game. And I actually feel like I'm not telling you to start him or even consider starting him, but I think this might be where Albert O starts to get a little bit more involvement in the offense this week. I'm a long way from recommending him as a fantasy play, but I think he might actually get, a few more targets and have a role, especially because, the running game is going to be impacted by Javonte Williams being out, and they might want to use a little over the middle passing action to the tight end to sort of make up for that, if you will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's just a rough one because I think he only had. Well, I don't think he had a single target last week. It was either he had one target or only like one snapper. It was like ridiculous how little how he was implemented just last week. But it seems like how could they not play him? But I'm not Nathaniel Hackett. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like who the heck knows? But no, I think to your point, it's definitely a good. He's a good player to keep an eye on, to see how he's implemented in this
Yeah,
Thursday night matchup
worth
without
monitoring.
Javonte Williams for sure. I'm with you there. So now we got the early morning Sunday game in London. We got kind of a tricky one here. We got the New York Giants against the Packers. I think the Packers are just in a spot to just completely crush them as far as I'm concerned. Outside of Saquon Barkley, I don't think you can feel comfortable starting any Giants player. Even Daniel Jones, who had a decent game on the ground. He only had like 70 passing yards, but he got the two rushing touchdowns there. I'm not starting him, not with the available wide receivers, which I think we're just down to like David Sills at this point. It's really bad.
Guys that many players, that many fantasy managers have literally never heard of, are going to be the only
That's right.
Giants wide receivers available. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit scary out there.
I just can't help but not start Saquon Barkley, so I'm going to be rolling with him. I just think they're going to just have every opportunity just to get his hands on the ball in this game, even though it's still a tough Packers defense, but you just got to start your studs in this case.
Right.
Then on the Packers side of the ball, it is kind of an interesting one because their wide receiver core has been a little bit all over the place, but Alan Lazard has been coming on as of late, and Romeo Dubes and even Christian Watson had the rushing touchdown last week. Any of those wide receivers you would feel comfortable starting in this matchup?
Comfortable is not the right word, but yeah,
Okay. Okay.
who is the Packers wide receiver one was one of the things I wrote down as my notes for this game.
Perfect. Yeah.
Who is really Aaron Rodgers' chief target at this point? I still feel comfortable starting Aaron Rodgers himself. I feel
Okay.
like
Sure.
he's kind of got the car back on the road, if you will.
Yep.
And he's still Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's been the back-to-back NFL MVP for the last 2 years. It's not like he forgot what he's doing out there. He just has a much less reliable group around him.
Right.
But I still feel like he's startable in fantasy football. I'm not suggesting he's going to be a top 5 quarterback or anything this week, but I feel like top 12 is definitely a real possibility. And
Yeah.
you might regret having him on the bench, particularly in this game, because I don't think the Giants defense is really that good, even though they've kind of looked good this season in stretches. I don't really believe in it. I don't really believe in this Giants defense. So I think he might have himself a nice little day in a, unique slot. It's not really prime time per se, but it's an isolated game where it's the only
It's
one
an island
on.
game. Yeah. Right.
So I think he might have himself a game when the whole world's paying attention.
For sure. Yeah, it's kind of like you're happy to have Alan Lazard and Dubes and some of these guys on your bench, but do we really want to throw them into our lineups? I tend to agree with you. Probably not in this particular week. However, the running backs, I would feel much more comfortable starting here. So Aaron Jones, I'm firing him up everywhere I have him. And AJ Dillon, who's kind of like a borderline flex play a lot of weeks, or like a zero RB, like RB2 kind of a guy. I think you could feel pretty confident starting him this week as well, hoping, of course, he gets a touchdown, which, of course, is very possible in this matchup as far as I'm concerned. Any differing thoughts on the Packers running backs?
No, I'm with you. I'm bullish on Aaron Jones. Like, I would absolutely start him everywhere you get the chance to.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm also really comfortable with AJ Dillon this week. In the flex spot is preferable, but if he's your second best running back option, that's not the worst that situation you could be in. So,
Gotcha. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens, what should be a very exciting game here. I kind of want to say start all your Bengals and start all your Ravens to a certain degree, right? Kind of like borderline guys like Devin Duvernay, I think are just kind of good to have on the bench. I'm not probably ready to start them unless I'm like super
fair.
duper desperate, which we really shouldn't be in that kind of situation in week 5. We're not really into the bye weeks yet. We're not like deep into the woods there. But he would become an interesting player when those weeks approach.
Oh, for sure.
Bengals. Yeah. So Bengals, I'm starting Burrow, I'm starting Mixon, Higgins, Chase. Even Hayden Hurst is kind of like in that Mo Alley Cox territory where he's kind of like if you need someone, if you're like the Cole Kmet drafter and you're just like want to pull your hair out, he could be an interesting option there in that game. Also questionable, so keep your eye on him. Like everyone's questionable this week, drives me nuts.
They all are. Yeah, they all are. It's crazy. Even in this game, I was just looking at the injury report. Higgins and Hurst, both questionable. For the Ravens, Bateman and Dobbins, both listed as questionable.
Right.
It's like, and I mean, everything that I kind of looked over it today, especially for this game, like, are these guys really going to miss? And everything I see, it looks like they're all trending towards playing, but it also deserves some attention. You got to keep your eye on that because this is the late game. You don't want to don't want to take a big risk if you have somebody you could use earlier on Sunday. I mean,
it's a fantastic point you make, because you really have to consider, well, if this guy doesn't go and I have no one to play on Monday night, like that really is like the nightmare. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Yes, sometimes you have to make those tough calls, but I'm really glad you brought that up because that's always something that just lingers every single week that you just don't always account for. But yeah, hopefully we have more clarity on Saturday and not
Yes.
all the way up until Sunday morning. But
Yeah,
either way, a lot of
clear up
questionable
as the
guys.
week progresses for sure.
Oh no, absolutely. Then obviously on the Baltimore side of the ball, you're starting Lamar Jackson. You're never not starting Lamar Jackson. Same
Right.
thing with Mark Andrews. I think Dobbins, I would feel comfortable starting. Based on what we were able to see out of him last week. I would, as long as it's clear that he's good to go, I would feel comfortable with him in the lineup. Bateman, I'm not so sure about. He has had a lot of production on just very few opportunities, which is just kind of interesting. I thought it'd be the opposite. I thought he would get like a lot more targets than what he's gotten so far. So that's been kind of an interesting development to see. I obviously love the talent, love to have him on the roster, but don't know if I would feel great about getting him into again one of these like singular flex spot leagues. Multiple deep flexes, perhaps, as long as he's good to go, but really just don't feel great about that until we understand that he's fully healthy and is being incorporated into the offense.
He feels like a good fit for the if you must category that you described earlier. If
For
you're
sure.
really down at wide receiver, I wouldn't say this is a terrible start, but yeah, it's likely that you've got better options. Is all I'm saying. It's likely.
Oh,
that
for
you've got better
sure. Yeah.
options. So.
Yeah, it's not like the wide receiver position is like super scarce. I mean, there's just an ocean of guys you could
Sure.
throw in there. Even like a Tyler Boyd in the same matchup. It's like if you have both of them and you're kind of like not sure. I mean, maybe Boyd is a better way to go. Just may seem a little safer. You lose a little bit of ceiling, perhaps. But it's better than getting nothing. Or whatever, you know what I mean? So
I do
very
have the
much.
slightest bit of pause to all of this, though, just because, as a Steelers fan, this is an AFC North dogfight, game. The winner of this is going to be in the driver's seat in the division right now. And a lot of times those games do tend to be a little bit lower scoring than you may expect, even when the offenses are pretty good. They just sort of find a way to stop one another. So I'm not at all changing any of what we just talked about. I mean, I'm still feeling comfortable starting who we just talked about starting, but in the back of your mind, you might want to, consider that
Just temper expectations
this
a
might
bit.
not
Yeah,
be the absolute best week for all of these guys. This
that's right.
probably nobody's setting their season high this week. Is what I'm saying.
No, I mean, I do like that grounded approach. It's like not every single game is going to be Ravens against the Dolphins from like 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? So, no, it is true in these division matchups. Like it could just be kind of ugly because they just know each other so well. And even though like the adjustments are as high as ever in these games because it's a divisional matchup, you know what I mean? And they just mean all the more for the playoff seeding, and everything. I mean, we're still kind of early, but you said, whoever wins this game is definitely in that driver's seat
Sure.
for
They'll
sure.
take early control of the division. And
Yep.
and then just having said that, though, this Baltimore secondary is in shambles right now, so there's a really good chance that Cincinnati's going to just carve them up. So
Very, very well could be the case, but yeah. So I think that's good. We are excited about these games, but might want to pour just a little bit of cold water on it, for sure, for sure. Okay, then to end the week, it'll be Monday Night Football, Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. Another one of these AFC West matchups that we were all very excited about coming into the season, and then some of them have just been kind of like, eh, you know.
right,
Um, the I think the Raiders finally got their first win last week. Is that right? That they do
they
have a
did,
win
they
officially
did.
now.
They're
That's
one and
right. Yeah.
three.
Uh, so yeah, and then not the start to the Josh McDaniels era that they were hoping for, I'm sure. But this
Right.
game could be very exciting here in Kansas City. It could. I think it should have a lot of scoring potential. Patrick Mahomes is still doing his thing, without Tyreek Hill. Obviously, you're starting Mahomes. Obviously, you're starting Travis Kelsey. Um, I was so like Clyde Edwards Hilaire has been kind of an interesting player here because I was a little hesitant to start him last week against Tampa Bay, just knowing how good that defense is, and then he
Yeah.
just does not slow down from what he's been able to do, even with like a lesser amount of like snap share than what you would anticipate. So I you got to keep starting him as far as I'm concerned. Um,
It's tough not to, for sure.
that's
Yeah.
right. Especially at the end of the week, it's like you really don't want to exhaust all your options when you have a really juicy matchup here against the Raiders, and then still part of this Chiefs offense. It is a little where I do have some question marks is within the pass catchers outside of Travis Kelsey. So can we start Juju
That's where everybody's
Smith-Schuster?
question marks are for
Uh,
the
it,
Chiefs.
I don't know. I mean, it's like any given week that these guys can do quite. Oh, I don't want to say like these guys are they're not all the same, obviously, but I think the big one is like Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, can we rely on him as like our anchor for the week, playing at the end of the week here again? Like the point with Bateman, with all these wide receiver options, do we want to trust him? Where do you fall on that?
No, I mean, I think all three of the Chiefs wide receivers that you might be tempted to start, they're all very risky. It's hard to trust any of them. I'm 100% with you that Juju is probably the one you want to start the most, but like when you look, on basically whatever fantasy site you're playing on, and you look at the projected scoring, guys like MVS and McCole Hardman are always being projected for more than they've done so far this year. So like
That's right.
the websites, the services, the fantasy sites are being optimistic about them, but it's not really like coming to pass yet. So I don't want to start a single player in the passing game that's not Travis Kelsey. Well, I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
if you consider CEH in the passing game, I guess that's fair too. Uh, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, primarily pass catchers. I don't want to start anybody except Travis Kelsey. I mean, he's still great. I think I said it when the season started, and I still think there's a good chance this ends up being his best statistical season because they just need him to, carry the load. So,
Yeah,
um,
that should be like much more of a funnel like towards him, without the threat of like a Tyreek Hill,
right.
unless one of those wide receivers is able to really like separate themselves from the pack to be like incorporated the way Tyreek Hill was. I just don't know if that's a possibility, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
it would be
It
it would be
doesn't feel like
fun,
it right now.
Right, that's right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
no, I'm with you. I think you're happy to have guys in this offense, but definitely not super confident rolling them out. Again, at this point where we still have all of our options, we're not in the bye weeks yet. I mean, you could be dealing with some injuries and stuff. Like if you're like if you have like Keenan Allen or something, and you're just kind of dreading having him, not play. Well, then maybe Smith-Schuster isn't a bad like fallback there, but definitely won't feel super great about it for sure. Now
And
on the
again,
Raiders,
you're gonna know by Monday night whether or not, if Keenan Allen didn't go, then yeah, you're gonna need to start Juju.
that's right.
But
Yeah.
that's the one bright side of it being the last game of the week. You're only going to start these wide receivers if you really have to. If you didn't have a better option on Sunday. So
That's right, and I think that same thinking has applied when I've considered like DST streamers is like a little bit of a tangent. If there's like a solid Monday night matchup with like a defense, I know 2 weeks ago I was recommending like the Cowboys as a streamer. You might
yeah,
not have even needed to start them if you already had your game locked up, unless your like league is like you get bonuses for like total points you force or whatever. Um, but in some cases, you might not even needed to use that DST to have the risk of like losing points, right?
right.
So that's always is another thing to think about. But again, I always kind of like to have those anchors of like the final matchup. Um, I was sweating some bullets this last week in like my longest running like home league. I was only up 6 going into the Monday night game, and my opponent had Allen Robinson, so I was really sweating that out. But I survived and I advanced. You know what I mean? But oh man, so that was a little scary being on that side of it. But if you're on the other side, oh surely like they can get 6 points worth. But now it was only like
It's
three
fun
and a
to get
half. It was
involved
like,
in
oi,
on Monday night though. It's nice. My
oh yeah,
daughter was in a ridiculous situation on Monday night. She had a 52.5 point lead plus George
oh,
Kittle,
oh
but she
wow.
was going against Debo, Ayuk, Allen Robinson, and Tyler Higbee. The other person had like
Oh,
4 people in the Monday night game, uh, and we sweated it right down to the end. She ended up winning by like 6.5 points, but that's
oh
it.
my
So
goodness.
I mean, it got real close.
Yeah,
It got real
Higby was
close.
just
Yeah.
getting like force fed there. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Oh my
got
gosh.
so many passes, and it's a PPR league, obviously, so that's what
I,
made it a little bit more nerve wracking. And then when Debo took off with that 50-something yard touchdown, that was basically just a short little pass, and he just took it to the house. We were like, "Oh
yeah,
no!"
yeah, yeah. It's like trip. No, oh my goodness. Oh, that's crazy. Oh man, it's such a fun sweat. You know what I mean? It's such an odd amount of stress for a little child to have to live through.
Right, right.
But it is so much fun though. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Now on the Raiders side of the ball, I think this is a pretty clear cut set of players to start and not start as far as I'm concerned. I think Derek Carr is still like a borderline like single QB league play here. Obviously a super flex. I would feel very confident in that, but definitely borderline for single QB leagues. Josh Jacobs just kind of going off of the explosion of week 4 would feel very confident continuing to roll
Yeah,
him out. Devontae Adams, I can't imagine you're benching him. And then Darren Waller, who again we all know what he's capable of, but has been a little bit disappointing at this point. If I have him, I'm starting him. I'm kind of like stubborn like
you have
that. I
to.
just can't
You kind of
not
have to.
I can't not play the guy who can get like 120 yards and a touchdown any week. You know what I mean? Um, you feel any differently about those guys?
No, not at all. And the Waller one kind of hits home. I don't have a lot of Waller, but I've got maybe a few more shares than I wish I had of Kyle Pitts right now. But
Yeah,
I'm rolling him out this week again. I mean, you have to.
I'm just
Especially where I
I'm just
drafted
gonna
him.
ride it. I'm just gonna ride the wave. It's just you unless you have an insane replacement that you can swap them out with, but that's
Yeah,
just it's
somebody who's
really
totally legit. But you know, who would you
I
have?
don't know.
I don't know.
I just feel like you're gonna be more angry and disgusted with yourself if you don't play him and he does well than if you just slot him in and he disappoints. You know what I mean? Like it's just a move I can't bring myself to make. Um, but yeah, the last player in the Raiders offense that I would just kind of say to keep an eye on is Hunter Renfro. Obviously not the best start to the year, and he's dealing with a concussion as well. I think he's questionable at this point, but definitely not a guy you're
He is.
starting yet. But definitely want to see him be incorporated into this offense more moving forward. But just want to touch on him for just a second. We are
Not
now
a position we talk about a lot, but also on the Raiders, if you've got Daniel Carlson, you're probably feeling pretty good. If your league includes kickers, you're probably feeling pretty good about Daniel Carlson. He's having a
absolutely.
stellar year so far. He's off to a really good start. So
Yep, basically just picking off where he left off last year. Yeah,
yeah,
so
yes,
yeah,
yes.
he was one of those like kickers that was like worth like reaching for. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
did get him
absolutely.
in the last round, he's a guy to target in the 15th round or something, right? Absolutely. So we're now going to go through some listener questions. So of course we are very grateful for everyone who asks, and we hope that we can help you through these lineup decisions. Ultimately, you're going to be the one who's pressing the lineup submit button, but we hope that we can help you sort of narrow down and refine your process when you go through these decisions that you have to make. First question comes from at Dynasty Santa. Of course, he is a friend of the show. He's Mr. Do It All at IDP, guys. Now he asks to pick two between Damien Pierce, James Robinson, and Aaron Jones. What do you like between those three, Dave? If you had to pick two of those, which two you going with?
Golly, that's
So
so we got Aaron Jones, James Robinson, and Damian Pierce. Those are all like three guys I'm excited about right now. Uh,
absolutely.
However, if I had then, and this is gonna sound so weird to say, but if I had to sit one of those, we're starting two. Am I correct?
Yeah, pick two
Starting
of
two of
those.
these. Okay. So what I'm really doing is picking the one to sit, and it's gonna be Damian Pierce. Not because I'm down on him right now. I mean, he just came off the best game of his career, to date. Obviously, it's a young career, but I mean, he kind of went wild. He had a big day with 131 yards and a touchdown this past Sunday.
Yep.
But here's why I'm not going to start him. And this is the part that I was mentioning is going to sound weird to say. That Jacksonville run defense looks pretty stout right now. I mean, they actually look pretty good against the run.
Yeah.
I didn't really expect to believe in Jacksonville's defense this much. I kind of am impressed by the whole team overall. I
Oh yeah.
feel like this is a team that's going to be a lot better than like the worst team in the league, last year. And I've been, telling some of the people that listen to me that, I think they could end up with 7 wins. That wouldn't shock me. Uh, but I expected it to be much more offensive driven. I didn't think the defense was going to be this uh, impressive. But yeah, right now it's a fairly imposing defense. They've done really well, with the exception of maybe last week against Philadelphia. But it's a difficult offense to handle. So I kind of give them a little bit of a break there, and also the game situation, turning the ball over so many times, just giving it back to Philadelphia. What do you expect the defense to do?
Yeah,
So
I think you could look at that game as a little bit of an outlier. Like the Eagles' rushing attack was, I think, the top of the league last year, and looking like that again
yeah,
this year. Really good offensive line, sloppy game in the rain, everything else. But again, like the turnovers also didn't do the defense any favors either. So I think you can kind of look at that as like a negative outlier for sure. I'm in agreement with you. I would also be sitting Pierce of this group as well. So I had James Robinson and Aaron Jones to start. Of course, James Robinson is in the same game here against Pierce, so the Houston defense
much
is not
more
as
favorable actually.
intimidating.
Matchup the other
100%.
way.
And then we already touched on Aaron Jones, who could be in just an absolute smash spot against the Giants there in London.
Yeah, you can't sit Aaron Jones right now. He's doing too much. There's no way to. You'd have to have just amazing running backs to even think about setting him down.
That's right. He's just going to be like lineup cement for me as far as I'm concerned, unless he's
I think
injured, which,
so.
well, he isn't right now. So, yeah. So I think we will help Steve out there at Dynasty Santa. So make the right decision there, Steve. All right. Next one is coming from Axton, who was on the show last week at Harding_3. This is for PPR and for tight end premium. Okay.
Oh, okay.
He's debating Antonio Gibson against the Tennessee Titans or Gerald Everett against the Cleveland Browns.
Okay. So
So I think this is a really interesting question. The Washington running game has been disappointing the last couple of weeks, and
Yeah.
Everett has just been like a target machine here, especially with Keenan Allen out. I think I'm going with Gerald Everett here. Do you feel any differently between the two?
No, I think I'm with you actually. I mean, the matchup against Cleveland is it's not the absolute best, but it's still a fairly favorable matchup. I feel like he has been obviously getting some serious targets lately, and like you say, that's more than just partly due to Keenan Allen being out. But as long as they're going to involve him in the offense, and he's going to get 5, 6 targets, maybe even more. It's a tight end premium league too, so you got to kind of hold that into account. It's worth more when he catches the ball. And
Yeah, no,
and they like
yeah,
and they like targeting him around the end zone. They've done their best to try and get him a few red zone targets here. So they're always looking at the chance of a touchdown.
yeah, and I have been encouraged by how Herbert has looked. Well, at least last week it was a little iffy against Jacksonville from 2 weeks ago after the rib injury.
Right.
Um, so
No, he
that
looked more comfortable last week by far. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that is just another sort of an uptick here for Everett. But yeah, I mean it's just Gibson does get work in the passing game, but not to the
He
degree
does.
of like a JD McKissick would. So that kind of limits his like target upside for sure. But I think it's the tight end premium aspect here that is making me lean Everett. Seems like it's the
Well,
same
and
for you. Yeah.
and albeit maybe a bit of a long shot. I mean, Brian Robinson is going to be eligible to play this week. So, I mean, I don't know that he's going to be ready, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility. He
That's
is back
right. Yeah, I think
practicing, so
yeah, I'm not sure if it would benefit the team to like rush him out there or anything, but
right.
and again, like we really wish the guy well. I mean, just horrendous, what
No, God,
happened to him and
it was
stuff.
awful, and it feels
But
good that he's recovering so quickly. It feels
the
really good to
fact
watch
that
that.
he's even practicing is
It's amazing.
outstanding.
It's amazing.
It's
Yeah,
phenomenal. Yeah. Again, it's the human over the entertainer side of things again, just like with Tua, right? So we're just rooting for him just
100%.
as a human being. And if
Yeah,
he can do some stuff on the field, even better. So
it's
absolutely with you there.
it's mind-boggling that he got shot basically through his knee, and it didn't do any major structural damage to his knee. That's like
That's like
virtually
unheard of.
impossible. It's
Yeah,
crazy. It's just crazy. He was
right.
really fortunate. He was really fortunate, and I'm glad to see him back on the practice field, and glad to know that he'll be able to, get his NFL career officially underway sooner rather than later. So,
That's right. Yeah. Okay, next question is from Abdil HDZ21. This is PPR. He lists 4 options for us to choose from. Just
okay.
PPR that doesn't specify anything else. So he's got George Pickens, Nahim Heinz, who of course plays on Thursday night, Mike Boone, who also plays on Thursday night, and then Zach Ertz going up against the former team, the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think I can pretty quickly eliminate Boone here from the list. I think
Yeah,
Pickens is interesting because of how Kenny Pickett was targeting him. The Steelers could also be in kind of a pass heavy matchup here against the Bills, trying to keep up with them. So that's interesting to me. Hines is interesting, and of course, Ertz is interesting.
yeah.
Um, Anyone who you are kind of leaning more amongst those three?
Um, yeah. I mean, I don't think I could pass up on Naheem Hines. I feel like he's going to have a big role uh,
Yeah,
with Taylor out, and like I had already previously mentioned, I think Denver will take an early lead. I think they'll be passing more in that game, and that plays right into Naheem Hines' skill set. He's a talented receiver out of the backfield.
and
Uh,
even those little short passes to him is like an extension of like the running game. You know what I mean? So if you
it,
just think
it
about
really
it that
is.
way,
And
yeah,
we are talking about PPR. So every time he catches one of those little uh, passes, regardless of the yardage, you're getting a point.
that's right.
So I think he's the one of the 4 that I would definitely have to go with. Did you say we're starting 2 of these 4? Is that what I heard?
Just one.
Oh, just one? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
he'd be my one. Although I don't hate the idea of Zach Ertz this week. In fact, that I think that the Philadelphia Arizona game is going to be the highest combined fantasy points out of the tight ends, because I feel like both of those
Oh,
tight
gotcha.
ends are going to have like a legitimate, really solid game. I feel like Goddard and Ertz are both in a position that they're pretty favorable matchups from either side, and I feel like they're both in a position that they're going to impact this game. So yeah, I mean, I feel like at the end of the week we could be looking at 2 top 5 tight ends out of that game.
Interesting. I like that call. Okay. Yeah, I think overall, though, I would feel probably the most comfortable with Heinz of the group, but Ertz definitely is in a good spot. Yeah, I wonder. I mean, maybe he's got like Kelsey too. Yeah, that's
Right.
why he's not considering this guy in his tight end spot. But who knows? Who knows?
Right,
That's
right.
all we were given.
I think
Okay.
the safest thing to go with, though, is Nahim Heinz is going to touch the ball the most, and that's probably what you're looking for. The guy, more times you get the ball in your hands, more chances to score fantasy points. It's a
That's right. Yeah, you
pretty
want to
simple
focus on the
formula.
volume. No, it really is. I mean, you just want to focus on opportunity and volume, and then that'll translate more often than not, to what you want, especially with Hines being the pass catcher. So,
I
with it
wouldn't be
being
surprised if
PPR.
he scores 2 touchdowns in this game. I mean, that's
Okay, yeah,
that's how involved I think they're going to have him in the
I love it.
offense.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Next one is from at Man versus Life. He asks Damien Harris or Nahim Heinz, another Nahim Heinz, in a half PPR. So this one is interesting. I initially was thinking just smash Heinz. However, the Patriots are going up against the Lions at home. So the Lions has just
That's a
been
really good matchup.
an
Yeah.
absolute smash spot for running backs here. Ramondre Stevenson has been a little bit sneaky and getting a little bit more snaps compared to Damien Harris, but I think
Yeah.
Damien Harris could certainly be a lock for a touchdown to be scored in this game. Although the quarterback situation there in New England is a little bit up in the air. It's like, is it going to be
Yeah.
Mac Jones? Is it going to be the rookie Zappy? Like, I'm not sure if Hoyer is going to be playing in this game. So
Well, Hoyer left with uh,
a concussion.
concussion,
Yeah.
right? Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure. I
Right.
had to start him in a league, a Superflex league, so
Oh
I
man.
was really just disappointed that he left after. Yeah, I mean, actually completed 5 out of 6 passes on that first drive. It's like he looked like he might be at least give you something just based on the efficiency, and then he goes down,
Right.
and I was like, oh no. So
Oh,
yeah,
it's
I
so
think that's a
frustrating.
huge concern overall is who's going to play quarterback for the Patriots this week. It's everything I hear is kind of sounding favorable for Mac Jones. I mean,
Okay.
it's not like nobody's said, yeah, he's definitely going to be out there, but um, the signs are pointing in a positive direction, if you will, for him. So I think that if he plays, then I'd feel pretty good about Damian Harris in this game. Uh, if Zappy is out there, I feel like it's going to be tougher for them to run the ball, just because, Detroit's going to know that, like, we have to stop the run and dare Bailey
Yeah.
Zappi to beat us. I mean, that's the philosophy they'll have to employ. But I mean, realistically, I still think I want Nahim Heinz in this matchup.
Yep.
Kind of what I've already mentioned. I just feel like he's going to have the ball in his hand a lot.
Definitely. No, yeah, I think I'm glad that he's being brought up in these questions just because of the dilemma of not having like Taylor in that game. But I'm with you there. I would lean Hines as well. But it's definitely not bad to have Harris. I just think in the PPR side of things, Hines has a little bit more upside there,
That's
aside
the
from the
difference for me.
questions at a quarterback. So that's good. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
pretty much
if it
spot
were a
on these.
standard
I
league,
love it.
I'd probably go the other way. I probably would. If we were
Gotcha.
talking non PPR, I'd
That
probably
makes
say Harris.
that makes a ton of sense. Next one is from the Progressive. He's asking, and he asked a couple weeks ago. So thanks for asking again. PPR. We're looking at AJ Dillon,
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Davis, or Brandon Ayuk.
Oh,
So
there's some
for
good. Those are
me,
some big names there. I like it.
there's definitely good options here. Gabe Davis the big question mark is like if that ankle is going to allow him to play. I would probably lean Gabe Davis amongst these options if he's for certain healthy in the game. My backup would be AJ Dillon. Then Ayuk is fine to have, but I just think the other two have just a little bit more upside for my liking. But I would tend to lean Gabe Davis as long as he's healthy. Where are you thinking amongst those three?
I feel like it's close for me between Dillon and Davis. Now there is a big factor. I say this as a Steeler fan. I'm kind of paying more attention to this maybe than anybody else. We got probably our two best cornerbacks are questionable for this game. The Steelers' two best quarterbacks are questionable for this game. So, I mean, that's Cam Sutton and Akella Witherspoon. If either of those guys miss, and especially if both of those guys miss, then I'm all about Gabe Davis in this game.
Gotcha. Okay.
If both of those guys play, I'm probably going to go A.J. Dillon just because, like we had spoken about when we were talking about the London game, I'm not sold on this Giants defense, and I think they can be had in the run game. So, I mean, they've really, even when they've looked good, they haven't really looked that great against the run. So I would say, it's A.J. Dillon if both Steelers corners start the game. But if either of the Steelers corners are out, and especially if both of them are out, then I'd definitely go Gabe Davis.
Excellent. Last one is a multi-part question coming from Triathlete Chef. He asks Jerry Jeudy or Michael Thomas, David Montgomery or Tony Pollard. Then we'll start with those two. Jeudy or MT, and then Montgomery or Pollard. So Jeudy obviously plays on the Thursday night game, and Thomas right now is questionable. He did not play last week.
Did not practice today either. So.
Did not practice on Wednesday either. That is correct. Typically, if it's just between the two of them, if they both are just purely solidly healthy, I would lean Michael Thomas here. But I think I would have to play. I think I would have to play Jerry Jeudy and just see what he can do on Thursday night and not risk it holding out for Thomas.
Yeah, I'm playing Jeudy this week if that's my decision, and it is largely injury influenced because, like you said, if they're both 100% healthy, then I'm going to pick Thomas every time.
Perfect. Look at that. Yeah.
This game situation, is going to be good for Jeudy. I think, that Colts defense is nothing special. The Broncos are going to at least be a little limited in their ability to run the ball, so they're going to kind of look to lean on the pass, more. So yeah, I think it sets up nice for Jeudy.
I love that. Then with a David Montgomery or a Tony Pollard, I mean, it just really comes down to if David Montgomery is good to suit up after missing last week. I'm not 100% sure on what his status is up to this point. And Pollard has been kind of a little up and down as well. So, I mean, I think the easy answer is Pollard, unless you know for certain that Montgomery is going to play. And even if he does play, you're looking at a really ugly Chicago offense with a really solid backup in Khalil Herbert, who very well could just be a better player than Montgomery. It's I don't think it's really that much of a real debate. I mean, Herbert is great. You could really just limit Montgomery's usage in the first place, especially if he's banged up. So where are you thinking about Pollard or Montgomery?
Well, the injury risk, it plays a part into, the just uncertainty with the injury is what I mean about not really knowing Montgomery's status right now plays a part. But yeah, you well said, Khalil Herbert has picked up the ball and just run with it, given the opportunity. I don't see that there's a situation where they can really not have him be a part of the offense going forward. So I think that will impact Montgomery's touches, probably for the rest of the year. I would go with Pollard.
Gotcha. And Pollard is going up against the Rams. So either way, I think I would lean Pollard there. Yes, this is great. We are pretty much are lining up all over the place, which is great.
Yeah,
That's fun to
I
see.
mean,
I don't.
the Rams are tough though against the run. I kind of didn't factor that in enough. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's close. I think it's close actually. Uh,
Gotcha.
check David Montgomery's injury status before, but
Right.
I think we're right what you said about the Bears offense being kind of ugly, but the run game is what they have. The run game is what's been most effective for them.
And this situation is helpful. The Bears play at 1 p.m. and then the Cowboys play at 4:25, I believe. So you'll know well ahead of when you need to make
Yeah.
that call between the two of those, what you're going to do. So then he throws out three quarterbacks.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
assuming to just choose one of these. We got Geno Smith against the Saints, Ryan Tannehill against Washington, and then Russell Wilson against the Colts. I would probably go with Russ, then Geno, and then Tannehill. That would be sort of how I would look at it for this week.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I give Russell Wilson a slight bump up because of what I mentioned about thinking the Broncos are going to need their pass game more than a typical week.
Right.
So yeah, I would probably go there. Although I don't hate the idea of starting Geno against the Saints. I mean, Geno Smith has impressed me this season just with how effective he's been. He's been really efficient. I think he's leading the NFL in pass completion, if I'm not mistaken.
I
And
think Yeah, I think you might be right about that. I know he's been unbelievably efficient, like as you said. But yeah, it is just quite remarkable. I guess like I just look at it like who are these guys throwing to if they're playing half decent, right? So in this case, Gino is supporting Lockett and Metcalf, and a couple of decent tight ends, but that just has been kind of a mess. And then Russell Wilson has Judy, Sutton, then Alberto, who's also been a little bit of a mess. So it's like, who would you rather be throwing the ball to, Metcalf and Lockett or Judy and Sutton? So I think overall, you would think Judy and Sutton, but I like both of those combos a lot. It
yeah,
is just weird to say out loud, Gino over Russell Wilson, but you just have to look at what they're doing. You know what I mean? It is just really
I mean that's
fascinating.
basically what the Seahawks chose, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's right.
Now, I mean, Gino's got good. They both have good weapons at wide receiver for sure. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Judy, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. I know that's a comparable,
Hmm.
matchup there. It's tough to decide which is the better pair there. And in the tight end, department, you mentioned that Gino's actually been kind of supporting two tight ends. I mean, Will Dissly's actually having a really good year so far. I
Yeah.
tweeted something the other day. He has a 100% catch rate, which I think is pretty impressive.
Oh
He hasn't
wow.
dropped a single target.
There
But
you
that
go.
being
Yeah.
said, I don't want to play it. I wouldn't want to play a tight end against the Saints. I don't expect either of the Seattle Titans to come out very favorable in this game because New Orleans does well against the tight end. So, I mean, that could also be sort of a deciding factor here. I was already leaning towards Russ, but thinking that Gino's going to be limited with his use of the tight ends, which has really been sort of his little, comfort blanket, if you will.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as readily available because New Orleans just hasn't allowed almost anything to tight ends this year. So
Gotcha. Okay. So you would lean Russ then over
I'm leaning
Gino
Russ.
for this
Yeah,
week.
I'm
Okay.
leaning
Gotcha.
Russ
I like that.
with a caveat that I don't hate Gino as a start this week though.
No,
So.
perfect. Yep. Nope. I gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Then the last one is a DST question. He's considering Dallas, Jacksonville. So Dallas against the Rams,
Right.
Jacksonville against the Texans,
Right.
Miami against the Jets, and then Titans against Washington. For me, this is Miami against the Jets. I think a case could be made Jacksonville as well. Well, that's kind of an interesting group here, but I'm definitely going Miami Dolphins against the New York Jets, hoping that Zach Wilson can turn the ball over a couple more times.
Well, I already talked up the Jacksonville defense a little bit earlier on.
Okay,
I think that's where I'd go right now.
perfect.
You know, I think they're built to defend against the run well. And limit Damien Pierce. I am not sold on Davis Mills. I'm far from sold on Davis Mills. I have a lot of questions about his game overall. So, yeah, I think Jacksonville's set up to have a pretty nice game here. I wouldn't be surprised if they can force a couple turnovers. You'd love it if they score a touchdown off of one of those, obviously. But yeah, I think they're going to give them a real hard time. I think that Jacksonville pass rush is going to be something that Davis Mills is going to really not enjoy. I think they're going to get after him, and so that's
Yeah, no, I
leaning.
think there's definitely turnover and sack upside in this matchup, for sure. So yeah, I'll go with that. That's a really solid breakdown. Um, I would would be hard for me to kind of steer away from the Dolphins, but I think for his sake, the Jaguars or the Dolphins, both of those are solid options for sure. Again, ultimately he'll have to decide there, but that'll be a fun one because we're a little bit different on that. We'll have to see how those play out as a little side bet here. But
Yeah, I mean,
that's great.
ultimately, with the exception of the Week 1 game against New England, Miami's been a little bit suspect in the passing game, which is not something you'd necessarily think because of their high caliber corners and such. But
Right.
yeah, they haven't been that solid as you might expect them to be. And matter of fact, in my column for In Between Media, Zach Wilson is my deep start of the week.
Oh,
When
there you go. Okay.
I'm talking after quarterback 16. So the idea is that, I go with who you would start in a 16 team league. And then if you don't have one of those top 16 quarterbacks, who are you going to start? And that's
Oh, I like
Zach
that.
Wilson's
Okay.
my guy, the deep start of the week. So
No, I mean, it makes a ton of sense, because they have great weapons,
yeah,
and we'll get to them in a little while here, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I like that call. You just hope that he can, you know, not turn the ball over and obviously be healthy.
got to
Because
limit the turnovers. Yeah.
he also is another one of these questionable guys who with like an ankle. It's like the week of like being questionable. It's like ridiculous. But I think we had a very good explanation and a good breakdown for all those questions, and thank them again for asking. And good luck to you all in your lineup starting decisions there. All right, so we're going to plow through the rest of the games here that are going to take place on Sunday. We touched on a bunch of these players, but we'll just kind of rattle off the matchups here. Pittsburgh Steelers at Buffalo Bills. You're starting Josh Allen. You're starting Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis, I think, is definitely a start-worthy player if he's healthy. Dawson Knox is just one of these like group of gross tight ends. It's like if you have them, I don't know. It's just one of these like kind of yucky things. I did want to touch on Devin Singletary and the running game there. I actually think he's okay to start this week. Normally he'd be more of like a flex option for me, but I think I'd be pretty comfortable with him as like an RB2, preferably as a flex. But it just is always like going to limit expectations there. But there are these weeks where he does have like big spikes there. Do you have any thoughts on Devin Singletary as a starting option, or is he more of like an if you must type for you?
No, I think it's a fairly good week to start Devin Singletary. Actually, it kind of pains me to say this as a Steelers fan, but they haven't been very good against the run this year. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the running backs have been getting over on them, especially running backs that can catch the ball, which fits Singletary's skill set, obviously. So yeah, I'd be feeling pretty good actually if I could start Devin Singletary this week. And I hate to say that. I hate to want to start people against my own favorite team, but trying to be realistic. So
No, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting because in the Bills' offense, Isaiah McKenzie had a concussion, so he might not play, and then Jamison Crowder broke his ankle
oh,
last week. So
that's
um,
potentially a big time for one of my Boise State guys. Rookie Khalil Shakir could have his first time to really shine this year. You know, I'm not
Absolutely.
going to
Yeah.
recommend that you put him into your fantasy lineups either, but I'm really excited to see if he gets a few more targets, what he can do.
But definitely a player to keep your eye on for sure.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm deeply interested and deeply invested in him in Dynasty. So I would
Yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
go out and get your hands on Khalil Shakir if you can.
As am I. He was one of those like third round, fourth round kind of targets I had in pretty much every single rookie draft I was in. Some I just kind of like reached because I just wanted to get a little piece of him, and then some I'm like, well, if he's there in the fourth, that'd be cool too. But I'm with you. But very excited for him. The Steelers offense is kind of an interesting one at this point, unfortunately. Um, if you have Najee Harris, it would be hard for me to not throw him into your lineup, even though he's been a bit disappointing. Obviously,
A little
not.
bit, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that one kind of makes you a little bit queasy, but I just would have to start him. Um, Pat Fryermuth, he's a pretty solid tight end as far as I'm concerned. I would remain pretty bullish there. Some other kind of interesting situations here is with the wide receivers, right? So you got Deontay Johnson, fantastic player, had a bad week last week. Chase
It's
Claypool and
also kind of
George
an
Pickens.
isolated situation too with
Yeah.
Deontay. That's the only thing I wanted to mention when you talked about him earlier. This is the first week that he hasn't had double digits in targets since week 15 of 2021. So,
Whoa.
I mean, he had a nice little solid stretch of double digit target games going. And this is his fewest targets in any game since week 5 of 2021. So, it was just,
Jeez.
I kind of feel like it got lost in the wash, especially with switching quarterbacks at halftime and stuff. I think that they're going to focus on getting Deontay more involved this game. I really feel like he's the kind of receiver that can lift a quarterback too. I think that was kind of evidenced when he played that season with Duck Hodges as a starting quarterback for half the year. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think getting him in the game plan is going to be good for Kenny Pickett. He'll get the ball to Deontay Johnson. Hopefully, they'll scheme up ways that he can get the ball to him in space so that there'll be, some decent gains on those plays. But overall, maybe feel like Kenny Pickett's, settling in. And then, George Pickens, he's gonna take some shots downfield to George Pickens. I mean, he showed us that in the second half of last week's game. So
Yeah.
George Pickens is a very interesting, very high ceiling fantasy play, but I think there's certainly some risk involved. But yeah, I think that he could have a really big day, and that wouldn't surprise anybody. I don't think. Chase Claypool, I am just staying away from right now until I see
Yeah.
him get a little bit more involvement in the offense. I mean, it's just he hasn't been getting his share. And I don't feel like they've been utilizing him very well to his skill set, but that's another topic entirely. Fryermuth is the offense, though, right now. I tweeted that this past Sunday. Pat Fryermuth is the Steelers' offense. So in a tight end landscape that's pretty desolate, I feel really good starting Pat Fryermuth.
Awesome. Yeah, I would agree. So we'll move on to the Los Angeles Chargers at the Cleveland Browns. Justin Herbert, you're starting. Mike Williams, you're starting. Austin Eckler, you're starting. And I would even say Gerald Everett is a pretty comfortable start at the tight end position, for sure. Keenan Allen, even if he's active, I don't know if I would feel comfortable starting him just with how he has not been practicing much. I probably would want to wait a week to see how he's doing, how he's feeling. I would hate to have him start and only play like 10 snaps or something. So I think the Chargers are pretty straightforward with like those big four there. Cleveland Browns, I think Chubb, you're starting. I think David Njoku, I think, is now a pretty comfortable tight end to start as well. Some question marks about if like Brissett can be like a super flex option. You like him as a super flex option, or is he still kind of iffy for you?
I guess I could get behind him as a super flex option. I mean, I'm sure there's still like, 6 quarterbacks I'd rather have at my second spot than Jacoby, but I mean,
Right.
he's about like middle of the pack QB2 for me. So you could do a lot worse. I mean, he's actually surprised me a bit this year in the same vein as Geno Smith. Two quarterbacks I just didn't
Absolutely.
expect a lot from, but they've been showing me a lot more than I really thought I'd see. So yeah, I've got him on my roster in the Stat Fishbowl, and I I contemplated starting him this past week. Ended up starting Goff instead, and I'm really glad I made that
Oh,
decision.
perfect. Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like Jacoby's played well enough to at least enter the conversation as my second quarterback. My starting quarterback is Lamar Jackson, so there's
Oh,
no conversation about that. It's who comes next. So, and then to be honest with you, I drafted Matt Ryan thinking that he'd be my QB2 for most of this season, and he's quickly found his spot on the bench. But
yeah, for sure.
I feel like I should have 4 usable quarterbacks in that league. Matt Ryan's not really usable right now, but
Yeah, the points lost for incompletions definitely changes the game there, for sure.
I
But
seriously had a loss in week 2. Uh, I lost by 8 points. Matt Ryan had negative almost 11. So if I would
oh,
have just started any of my other quarterbacks, or even put myself in there at quarterback, I would have still won.
that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's just so frustrating when like a quarterback just like completely vomits like all over themselves and in
Yes,
Scott
totally.
Fishbowl
Feet
where
down his
it's
leg. Yeah.
so yeah, where it's so critical, like um I had Kirk Cousins, or the one year like Kirk Cousins had like some like ridiculous like -18 or something in Scott Fishbowl. It's like, oh my gosh, I'll never forget that. But that's horrible. But yeah, so I think Brissett is an interesting super flex, but he could definitely do better. Um, that leaves us with like Kareem Hunt and Amari Cooper. Those are usually the two like pretty solid like or like chalky like starters. I do like Amari Cooper. I wish he just was more consistent week to week, but this is the way it goes sometimes. Kareem Hunt though, would you feel comfortable with him as a starter against the Chargers?
No, comfortable is not the right word. Again, he would fit solidly into that if you must category that you talked about earlier.
For sure, for
I,
sure.
it's not an absolute disaster to start Kareem Hunt, but there's no real way I'm excited about it. So,
Gotcha. No, I think that's fair. Moving on to the Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, the Bears have just been kind of yucky, I think. Outside, so here's another. Just going back to David Montgomery. If David Montgomery does not play, I think I'm still very confidently starting Khalil Herbert. Either way, I think Darnell Mooney coming on here as of late is very interesting to me. Um, he's kind of like a borderline flex play option there. Outside of those two, I still don't feel tremendously comfortable starting anybody else in that offense. As far as the Minnesota Vikings are concerned, I'm just full go on all my Vikings. Cousins, I'm starting. Justin Jefferson, obviously. Adam Thielen, Irv Smith, who's like kind of an interesting tight end play, just with the landscape of tight end. He still hasn't been like tremendous, you know what I mean? But I would still feel
yeah.
okay about him. And then Dalvin Cook. Um, he's just leaving a lot of meat on the bone, but as long as he's active, I just can't help to not play him. You know what I mean? And then like that that Alexander Madison touchdown in London was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You know what I mean? If you're like a
Hey,
Dalvin Cook,
it's 2 weeks
you
in a
know,
row, man. It's 2 weeks in a
yeah.
row for Alexander Madison. He's another one of my Boise State guys, so I'm pretty excited to see it actually.
Oh, there you go. There
I,
you go.
I don't
Yeah.
have a lot of Dalvin Cook, so for all of you Dalvin Cook managers out there, I apologize for saying that.
Well, no, yeah, it's just one of these things. A good player, but just a perennial headache, as well.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's one of these
I'd like to
things.
see
But
him in a new place next year. He's in a contract year, so I'd like to see
oh,
him go
interesting.
somewhere else. But that's conversation for a different day.
Yeah, we'll have you back on the show in the off season. We could talk about it then, for sure.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, so I think the Vikings are a pretty easy start in them if you have them. kind of a situation this week. Next one would be the Detroit Lions at the New England Patriots. The Lions, are just remarkably putting up points in games that I did not anticipate, but they are just like this never-ending sweet spot for like fantasy because like their defense is banged up but also is kind of brutal, as far as stopping. So they just have to keep on pushing the ball down the field, which is what you love to see for fantasy. And they haven't slowed down, since week
Right.
1 against Philadelphia. Now it is the Patriots and they are on the road in New England, and I don't know, I just don't know if it's going to be the same 30 plus points that you're used to seeing like the Lions put up. I think they could come to like a crashing halt to a certain degree. But they will still be in a position most likely to kind of keep up pace with the Patriots. Still kind of tricky because Swift is still going to be out. As long as TJ Hawkinson is healthy, I'm comfortable starting him. Oh, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is most likely going to be out, I believe. Would you still feel comfortable starting someone like Goff in a game like this, where it's like it's not Seattle, it's like the Patriots? Would you still feel comfortable starting Goff against the Patriots on the road?
It's not as gravy as last week. Like you say,
That's right. Yeah.
he's not playing Seattle this week, but I'm not that terrified of the New England Patriots defense, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm still pretty all right with starting Jared Goff this week, actually. Yeah, I don't, chances are you've got a better option in a 1 QB league, but you definitely want to roll him out there in a super flex league. And, maybe you don't have a better option in a 1 QB league, to be honest with you. There's some guys that people, tend to start. Like Kyler Murray freaks me out this week, for example. Kyler Murray typically be a QB1. And I think, most weeks it's a no-brainer start for Kyler Murray, but I don't want to watch him. I don't want to trust him against this Philly defense is what I was trying to say.
No,
I do want to watch him. I didn't mean to say I don't want to watch him. I do want to watch him because actually I think this Arizona-Philly game is going to be entertaining. But
it's more of a fun one to watch, but not have any stake in the fantasy realm with Murray. And I got you.
Maybe so. Yeah. I want to see what happens. I just don't feel good about starting Kyler Murray. And so I could easily picture a situation where like you could have Kyler Murray and Jared Goff as your quarterbacks on your roster. That's entirely possible. And I would probably go with Goff over Murray this week.
Interesting. Okay. Gotcha. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, because it's one of these situations where it's like if they have the lack of pass catchers, right? Like I don't think Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or their third one, I think Reynolds didn't even practice today. So that just makes me a little queasy. But there's still Jamal Williams. I would still would feel comfortable starting him. He obviously has been an absolute rock star. On and off the field. He's such an awesome guy. So I'm happy
he's leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns right now. That's incredible.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So I'd be very confident in him for sure, but definitely Goff is definitely a comfortable super flex and maybe even a sneaky QB or 1 QB play. So I do like that. Now the Patriots outside of their running backs, I really don't have a ton of confidence in. I do like Jacoby Myers, but he's been a little bit banged up. There's no guarantee that he plays this week. So it's like what we said on the one listener question, you'd feel pretty confident starting uh, Damien Harris. I would even be somewhat confident starting Stevenson as well in spots. Say if I have Swift and like Williams, right? If I lost both of them, could I throw in Stevenson? I think I absolutely could. I would feel good about that.
I'm rolling him out in one of my leagues this week. So
there you go. Yeah. Against the Detroit Lions there. So we like that. Anyone else on the Patriots offense you like outside of the running backs this week? Or you just kind of like,
Devontae Parker is such a feast or famine kind of guy. I'd love it if I had him like on a best ball roster or something, for example. It makes me more nervous to just like have to put him in, week to week. But that guy is like, that guy could pop at any time, It's really possible. So, I could see people starting Devontae Parker. I'm not, comfortable with it, but I could see that. And I mean, even though it's been really rough to trust Hunter Henry at all this year,
Right.
this is a matchup that kind of does work out for him. I mean, Detroit has been nothing special against tight ends, and so I feel like if there's a get right game in here for Hunter Henry, like this could be it. You know,
I was
again,
I was gonna
I'm
bring
not
him up.
recommending him, but
Right.
if you're just lost in tight end land, you could do a lot worse than rolling out Hunter Henry this week. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's been one of the just the saddest of disappointments this season so
Yeah,
far.
it's been
Because I'm such a
frustrating.
fan of him, and he was like a real consistent like later like tight end that I was like targeting. Sadly, if I missed out on Cole Kmet, you was like, oh my gosh, and Cole Kmet. But yeah, so it's like definitely I still have my eye on him, but you have not liked what you've seen. But I do think Devontae
But
Parker is interesting, especially if Jacoby Myers is out once again.
yes,
Uh, Moving
adds to the
on,
interest for sure, or the intrigue for sure.
definitely. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks at the New Orleans Saints. Again, like we got our questionable Saints here. We did not have Jameis, Kamara, Michael Thomas last week in London, and then Jarvis Landry really didn't come on until very late in that game. Outside of Chris Olave, I'm not really sure who I would feel supremely confident starting this week. I do traditionally like Jarvis Landry as a PPR play, um, especially again, it's against Seattle, so it should be like a really nice spot to get these guys in your lineups. But I don't know. It just kind of freaked me out how he just didn't get a lot of look in that London game where they had a lot of opportunities to give him passes and it just didn't happen. So I don't know if that was like an Andy Dalton thing or what, but um, it just kind of gives me a little bit of pause without Jameis in there outside of Chris Olave, unless you feel differently, like maybe Mark Ingram this week if Kamara is out again. I don't know. It's interesting.
I don't hate that. I mean, like
Yeah,
I'm not beating the drum for Mark Ingram or anything, but yeah, if Kamara's out, Latavius Murray's not on the team anymore. They're gonna have to
that's
give those
right. Yeah.
rushing attempts to somebody. I think Mark Ingram will be heavily involved if there's no Kamara. But I mean, if you're playing him, you're hoping for a touchdown. Basically, I mean,
Right.
he's not gonna dominate down the field, between the 20s or anything like that.
And I think with Kamara, if he is in, even though he's a little bit banged up and has been questionable for a little while here, he's just another one of
I'm
these
still playing
guys.
him. Yeah,
I can't live with myself with him not in my lineup if he's active. You know what I mean? I just gotta
right. Oh yeah, for
roll
sure.
with it. For sure. So I'm glad we feel the same way. We have already touched on Geno Smith. We like him as like a super flex play. I'm still starting Metcalf. I'm still starting Lockett. They just are going to be
Start the wide receivers. Yeah.
so the wide receivers for sure. Just in they're kind of like the Lions. Like they're always are going to be in a position to uh, have decent passing volume there. Rashad Penny had the big week last week. Would you feel comfortable starting him against the Saints?
That's such a tough run defense. If I can get away from it, I'm gonna want
Right.
to. But I mean, you might not have better options. Especially depending on how your draft went. I mean, a lot of people. Rashad Penny was kind of a hero of the zero RB crowd. Kind of a really popular zero RB target. So you may
Oh
be in
yeah.
a position where he's one of your best two running backs, and if that's the case, I'm not afraid to put him in there, but I don't want to really. I don't really want to.
Yeah, I definitely am not going to expect a blow up game. I think he'll just
Yeah, it's not going to
continue
be
to
last
be.
week.
That's right. No, I think he's going to be basically what I thought he would be most of the season, which would be like a touchdown dependent kind of an asset. Even though, last week was what it was, I just do not have those kinds of expectations against the Saints this week. But I think I would feel okay starting him again, depending on your options. He's kind of like if you must type for me. I just don't want to get too like, uh, you know, rosy eyes, for him at this point, just because he had the big week. The Saints are a pretty tough unit there. Um, yeah, so pretty clear cut there. The Miami Dolphins at the New York Jets. We touched on a little bit of this, but no Tua in this game. You're gonna have Teddy Bridgewater starting. I think he's kind of an interesting super flex option. He's kind of I don't know. I kind of think he's maybe around that like Jacoby Brissett territory, or was he like one of the ones you saw like clearly ahead of Brissett?
No, I prefer Brissett actually.
Okay, so Brissett over
I mean,
Bridgewater.
it's reasonably close because the matchup against the Jets is favorable. But yeah, I'd take if I was choosing between Brissett and Bridgewater somehow for my QB2 this week. I'd be going with Brissett.
Okay, yeah. I think we're pretty confidently starting Waddle and Hill.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, that said, I don't really downgrade Waddle and Hill that much. It's a slight downgrade. They're probably not. They're not going to have their season high games this week either. But
right.
They're still secure enough that if you've got them on your team, they need to be in your lineup.
For sure. Kind of another one of these like kind of icky tight end situations is Mike Gesicki. Tons of talent, but just very up and down as far as how he's implemented.
I don't trust him at all.
I was just gonna say that, so I'm with you there. Another kind of an interesting situation is like the running backs between Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. Mostert looked great last Thursday night against the Bengals, but it is just as much of a split backfield as you can find. Edmonds almost caught 2 touchdowns on Thursday
Should
night,
have had
but he
2
came.
touchdowns. Yeah,
That's right.
really
That's right. So it's really interesting. They both are kind of in that like if you must territory, because I think it's an interesting spot against the Jets where like they could be um I think that they both could be in positions to potentially get touchdowns. But really only if I had to. I don't feel great
yeah.
starting Edmonds. I feel like he's going to be a starter for me in Scott Fishbowl this week, but I don't know. Don't feel great about it. That's basically it. Yeah. So they both fit into that like if you must category.
Edmonds
Then
seems to be getting a tad more of the goal line work, so that take
oh,
that for what
Edmonds.
it's worth,
Okay.
I guess.
Yep. Okay.
But like I say, it's hard to call. It's hard to call between those two guys for sure.
Gotcha. The New York Jets. You have a Brees Hall coming on pretty strong lately. So as long as he's healthy, I would feel pretty
Yeah, he's on
confident starting
the
him.
injury list or on the injury
That's right.
report, but I don't know. I haven't heard a whole lot about his situation right now.
Definitely something to monitor for sure, but I mean it's kind of hard to ignore how he's been implemented.
Dude, I got like a dog situation here. Can I take just 1 second here?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Sorry,
Yeah, I
I'll be
can.
right
Oh,
back.
you're good. No, you're good. Yeah, I'll just keep on going. Yeah. So along with Brees Hall situation, Michael Carter is another one of these like PPR kind of running backs, but has been getting less and less usage as Brees Hall has been coming on stronger here for the Jets. Then the pass catchers, you have Elijah Moore who came on a little bit stronger as Zach Wilson came into the game last week or started last week. I'm still pretty confidently starting Garrett Wilson more as a flex option, and then Elijah Moore more of like a deeper flex option for me. Then you still have Corey Davis, who's an interesting play as well. He's one that I'm more happy to have on my roster, like on the bench, unless it's like a multi-flex situation. I'm not going to be starting Corey Davis, but um, then the tight end, Tyler Conklin, I think is an interesting tight end option, not a surefire starter by any means, but definitely someone you could feel semi comfortable with. Again, just with the landscape of tight end, you could definitely do worse, as he has been getting a decent amount of volume. You just hope that Zach Wilson can kind of tighten it up. But as Dave said earlier, Zach Wilson is a sneaky deeper start for him. So I was saying, just kind of reiterating your point about Zach Wilson being a deeper starter in this matchup, and kind of combining him with Tyler Conklin as kind of a deeper tight end play, who's been kind of sneaky consistent here
Yeah.
as of late.
Yeah, I like both of them actually. My daughter has been playing Tyler Conklin after she drafted Hunter Henry. We talked about a little bit earlier, and after he
Mm-hmm.
put up that goose egg, she was pretty upset and felt like she needed to find a new guy. And she found Tyler Conklin, and he's been reasonably effective for her. And but yeah, I'm excited about Zach Wilson, but I'm also like I'm not trying to get like on a runaway cart here. He had his issues in the start against Pittsburgh, but he showed some promise, and especially in that second half and kind of leading that comeback. Uh, I was impressed by his poise in the pocket, and I think that his return could definitely spell good things for Elijah Moore. It certainly seemed to be a connection between the two of them in that game. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about him. But again, like I said, this is a deep league start. There's a good chance you've got a better option than Zach Wilson. But I'm really excited about him in a super flex situation. I'd be pretty excited if he was the second quarterback to slot into your lineup. That'd be really good. I think that'd be a good situation.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, so we're going to move on to the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Falcons are without Cordell Patterson, of course, and Marcus Mariota has been a little bit up and down. Very disappointing last week, as well as Kyle Pitts. Again, Kyle Pitts is someone that I can't bring myself to bench at this point. And things are a little bit rough in the running back game. Caleb Huntley just like came out of nowhere and was very efficient with his touches in the running game. Tyler Algier is kind of an interesting running back in that on that team as well. I would be fine to have these guys on my roster. Like we're talking like deep dynasty rosters as far as like Caleb Huntley is concerned, but definitely not comfortable starting them in general, but especially against the Buccaneers. I am not there yet, and we'll just see what happens. Maybe they surprise, but
Right.
yeah, I just am not ready to throw them into lineups at this point.
I'm with you. Although I did grab Caleb Huntley on a couple of low dollar fab bids in some of my dynasty leagues. So
Oh yeah.
He's worth stashing at the end of the bench and see how this situation plays itself out.
Yeah, no, I'm in some leagues where it's like any player with a pulse, is like worth
Right.
adding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a 14 team dynasty league I'm in, and so like he was like, yeah, I'll spend like I think I got him for like $27, out of like 200.
Right.
So I was happy to come away with that for usually just a barren wasteland of like options. So I was
Right.
very excited to see that. Fortunately, I got him, so I was like, yay! But anyway, but outside of Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I think Marcus Mariota is like a borderline super flex play. You're just really hoping he can maximize on his rushing ability, but even then, it's kind of pushing it.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I'm with you. He's borderline, but I hate it. I don't want to have to play Marcus
Oh,
Mariota.
for sure.
I
Yeah.
legitimately like maybe would prefer to play Andy Dalton.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. All
Just
right.
because of the matchup against the Seahawks, but uh,
Well, and again, it is like the Buccaneers. I mean, not everyone is Patrick Mahomes and can just like light it up against
yeah,
anyone anytime. But it is like I don't know. I think this could be really ugly for the Falcons this week, for sure. And then on the Tampa Bay side of things, um, obvious starts are Mike Evans, um, Leonard Fournette. If you have them, you're starting them. I think Tom Brady is pretty interesting this week as Chris Godwin was able to come back and played actually pretty well in his return. Anyone else on that offense you would feel comfortable starting?
Let's see. You mentioned Evans and Fournette. I don't really like anybody else on this offense that
Okay.
much. But I think Tom Brady's come back to a little bit more what we were expecting of Tom Brady. He had a very nice outing, even though the team didn't really. He had a very nice outing this past
Right.
Sunday. So, yeah, I feel good about having him back in the starting lineup. He's a middle of the pack QB1 for me.
I love it. I would agree. So like someone like Chris Godwin, I'm glad he's back. I still would be a little bit hesitant maybe to get him in a lineup. I guess if he's healthy, I'd start him. Um, but I don't know, it just gives me it's a little bit of pause for whichever reason. But glad he's back. I'm very
Yeah.
encouraged by how he did play. I just don't know if the Buccaneers are going to be in the same position to really need to be like force feeding like passes like they were last week. But still fairly solid overall for sure
Mhm.
with Brady. So I would agree with that. Looking at the Tennessee Titans at the Commanders, Derrick Henry, I'm definitely starting. I think Tannehill is kind of a borderline super flex. Normally he's like pretty safe and pretty solid, but no, uh, Traylon Burks, he may be out for
Yeah.
several
Maybe
weeks.
4 weeks is what they were saying.
Okay, gotcha.
Up
Yeah,
to or something like that.
yeah,
Turf
so
toe.
maybe turf toe, yeah, that's horrible. So even really outside of Derrick Henry, I don't know if there's. I guess maybe Robert Woods I could put in as like a flex play. I wouldn't love it necessarily, but I
Right.
think he's definitely passable as a flex option. So maybe Tannehill isn't that isn't that really all that solid. I mean, he does have some like rushing upside as well, but it's kind of not much to go around at this point, as
Right.
far as that offense is concerned. The Commanders, Carson Wentz, who started very strong, then has kind of tailed off here in the last couple of weeks. Still a lot of good weapons in that offense. I mean, you still have Terry McLaurin. I would
Tons.
feel I would still be I'm still starting him pretty comfortably. Um, Curtis Samuel, who's been kind of an interesting surprise. He's been playing very well. I don't know how supremely confident I would be starting him. How do you feel about Samuel? Because I think Dotson will likely be out this week, so there could just be a little bit of a decent opportunity there for Curtis Samuel. It just I'm not sure. Just whichever reason, it just gives me a little bit of pause just because of the Carson Wentz factor. Where you're at with Curtis Samuel.
Well, I think Curtis Samuel is one of these guys we've always been kind of hoping would be a reliable fantasy target, and it hasn't really come to fruition. I mean, obviously, out of the gate this year he was extraordinary, but he's sort of cooled off a little bit with Carson Wentz. You said the same thing. You said Wentz was really hot out of the gate. The two things definitely went hand in hand. The last 2 weeks for Curtis Samuel have been less intriguing.
Right.
Um, I do feel a lot better about him if Jahan Dotson is out of the game, though. Obviously, it's just one less
Opportunity.
one
Yep.
less player there to compete for targets. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I can see if you're in a situation where you want to start Curtis Samuel this week. I don't really want to start him, but I can see how the situation might present itself. Especially if you were trying to start somebody like Jahan Dotson or Traylon Burks or somebody. Uh, he's in the flex range for me. He's in the flex
Yeah,
range.
I would agree with that. And then Antonio Gibson as well is a running back. I would feel mostly comfortable playing for sure.
Mhm.
Um, Moving on to the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, I think that Jacksonville offense is kind of just like a negative outlier against the Philadelphia Eagles and the wet and rainy turnover filled fest there.
Mhm.
So I think Trevor Lawrence will remain a pretty solid super flex option. Still gonna roll with Christian Kirk. I'm still gonna roll with James Robinson. Uh, Kind of a disappointing player so far has been Travis Etienne. Still not super comfortable having him in a lineup unless we're talking about like a deep dynasty where there's multiple flex options. So even at best, he's like an if you must type of an option. Evan Ingram has also been very up and down, mostly down. The pass volume should still be there with the Jaguars, but still kind of outside of my comfort zone as far as a starting tight end goes. You have
Right.
any different thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I think he's a little bit interesting this week if Zay Jones doesn't go, which is kind of sounding like he
Oh,
might
okay. There you go.
not. I mean, again, I'm not like I wouldn't say start Evan Ingram with confidence, but if you're looking,
Right.
if you're scanning for tight ends and that you know that Zay Jones isn't going to play, uh, he's not too bad of an option. Not too bad of an option. I think overall, I like the Jags better on both sides of the ball in this game. Yeah, I mean, this isn't exactly a betting show, but this is one where I feel good about taking Jacksonville. I'd take them with the points. It's a 7-point spread. I think
Okay.
they're going to beat up on the Houston Texans.
I like it. On the Texans side of the ball, I just can't help but keep on starting Brandon Cooks. So Cooks, I would feel comfortable starting in this game. I think Damien Pierce, again, if you have him, it's going to be hard to not get him into your lineup, but definitely would temper expectations for sure. Just all things considered. Anyone else on this Texans offense you would feel comfortable even considering, or even like borderline like rostering at this point? I don't know. Like Nico Collins is kind of interesting. But I don't
Nico
know.
Collins is roster worthy, but I'm not
Yeah, for
going to
sure.
put him into the game this week at
Right, right,
all.
right.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I mean, I don't feel good about starting any of them this week, even Brandon Cooks.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And
All right.
I usually am kind of on Brandon Cooks, but I would even, you know, I would be a little afraid of starting him this week too. I think this Jacksonville defense is going to really handle the Texans offense without that much difficulty.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
I
so
I think I'm back to what I was kind of talking about earlier. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars would be a good defensive team, DST to start this week. I
yeah,
think they're in a position to score you points.
I love it. All right. So that will wrap it up for the Sunday early slate. We're going to finish off the show with the last three matchups of the week here, just like the later afternoon round of games here on Sunday. We have the San Francisco 49ers at the Carolina Panthers. I just was starting to laugh there because the Panthers are just such a train wreck. It's just so sad.
It's
Like
been rough.
DJ Moore, his talents are just endlessly wasted. I mean, it's just one of these things. It's like he got a lot of targets last week, mostly because of the come from behind effort, just trying to come back and everything else. But outside of Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, who's even a borderline starter at this point, I mean, you might not feel great about your options outside of him, but I really think a case can be made that unless you start seeing it happen, he probably could be benched at this point. It's really sad,
Yeah. I wanted to say you can't bench him, but like I can't disagree with what you were just saying. I mean, he's benchable. He's benchable. I mean, there's a lot of situations where you're probably not going to be able to get away from starting him. But I don't know if I've ever seen Baker look this bad before. I can't remember. I mean, this certainly seems to be the low point of his career to date.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by the landing spot and just by like the second like opportunity he had after just being, I mean, just for all intents and purposes just like disrespected but by the Browns
Yeah,
and,
for
what
sure.
what they did, and bringing in Watson. And I guess like Baker was like having he had the surgery on the shoulder and everything else, but still it's like it's just insane to me. It is what it is. But so I really thought like, well, that would like spark a little something under him. He'd be all Baker and swaggy about things. But it's just been really bad, just really bad mechanics. Like I just think back, there was a play when they were driving down the field, like at the end of the game where they're like down like 10 points or whatever. They start on like they're like at like the 6 yard line, and he's running back like 12 yards and like throwing like back where I think it was this ball that was like through like the back of the end zone. It just looked horrible. Like it's like if I were to start playing quarterback and like someone's running out, like that's what I would do. Just like really, I don't know. It's really sad. It's really not good. I hope that he can turn it around somehow, and Matt Rule, and everyone else there. But I mean, really, it's insane. It's really hard, and then against a really tough San Francisco defense to boot, so I just really don't feel great about a lot of those Panthers in this matchup. Now on the other side of the ball, with the 49ers, I would be very comfortable starting Jeff Wilson still, Deebo
Oh,
Samuel,
yeah.
obviously. I think Brandon Ayuk is kind of like flex-ish option, more so in like a deeper flex situation. If there's like multiple flex spots, more of like an if you must type. George Kittle is another one of these like Kyle Pitts, where it's like if you have him, you're starting him because he can just blow up like any given week. It just has yet to really happen there. Anyone else on the or how about like Jimmy Garoppolo? Is he like a super flex for you this week, or is he even kind of borderline at that?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to roll
Right.
with Jimmy Garoppolo in my super flex slot. I mean, I guess there's a situation where maybe your other options are Matt Ryan or something, where I might go with Jimmy G. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, I'd much rather play Kenny Pickett than Jimmy G if I had that option,
Okay.
for sure.
Gotcha.
Even
All
though
right.
I think even though I think it could be a really rough go for Kenny Pickett against the Buffalo Bills. So that's not the defense I wanted him to start his first game against.
No, for sure, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's just I think Jimmy G becomes more of like a safer super flex, I guess, like when you're in the thick of like bye weeks and stuff. So if you can avoid
Mhm.
it, probably best to avoid. And then now we're going on to the Eagles at the Arizona Cardinals.
Fun game.
Starting
Fun.
all your Eagles, as far as I'm concerned,
Oh yeah.
Hurts, Goddard, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Miles Sanders. I said Goddard. Yes, start all your Eagles. The Cardinals are interesting because right now, Marquise Brown is questionable. Another one of the questionable bunch. The Eagles have been really stout against running backs for the most part. I mean, Swift did really well against them in week one, but mostly they've been pretty tough on the running backs. So I don't feel great about James Conner in this matchup. There are situations where you could do a lot worse than him, but if you can help
Right.
it, I would probably lean on benching him where necessary. Um, if Marquise Brown is healthy, I'm happy to start him. Zach Ertz, happy to start him. Kyler Murray, a little iffy. You would say.
Kind of a
Um,
lot of yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I do. It's weird because like I'm scared about Kyler Murray, but I also feel like Zach Ertz could have a big day. So
right.
the two things do seem like this. They couldn't both be true, but they could actually be true. I mean, I think that getting the ball to the wide receivers, especially when you're talking about Darius Slay, I think it's going to be a problem.
No,
Uh,
definitely. Yeah,
and
I
and
think
if Marquise Brown doesn't go, then I really don't like the chances
yeah,
of Kyler Murray getting the ball to his wide receivers very much.
he would
I
need
think
to do
I think
a
you'd
lot
have to
of
lean on
damage.
Zach Ertz more,
Right,
even
100%.
more.
Yeah, he would need to get a lot of his points on the ground and have like a rushing touchdown or two to really make up for what's lost in the passing game. So yeah, I mean, he seems to be like just kind of a chalky start, but it's just one of these situations like because of the matchup, you just don't feel great about it. So if you can go another direction, I think you absolutely can. So I'm with you there. Um, then to finish off the group of games here, we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams running game just continues to look mostly ugly. Allen Robinson, we're still trying to see where on earth he is. It's just so I
Yeah,
really
so
wish he
bizarre.
could. I mean, it's like Stafford just like does not have eyes for him. He only looks to Cup. He only looks to Higbee. It's just insane. Um, I mean, you got to believe in the talent, but you cannot put him in a starting lineup right now, as far as I'm concerned. Um, and even like Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, don't know if I can really trust them either at this point. You feel any sort of way between the two of those?
I would do my best to stay away from him. Honestly, Henderson is still kind of borderline there for me right now, but Akers, his usage has been hard to understand right now, and so I don't know if it's that he's still recovering from the injury. I don't know if they don't trust him in certain game situations, but I mean, he'll have like a 15 rush attempt week, and then what did he have, like 8 against San Francisco? So, I mean, where are they at with him? I understand they were kind of trailing, for a good portion of that game, but it's just, I can't, there's no way I can put Cam Akers into a lineup with confidence at this point.
Yeah, I think outside of Cup and Higbee, it's looking pretty iffy if I can really start anyone else from that offense, and even like Stafford. He's been very
definitely
disappointing as
don't
well.
want to start Stafford in a one QB league. I do not want to start Matt Stafford, and I know that you probably drafted him to be your starter. I mean, you unquestionably drafted him to be your starter, but I don't know that you can right now. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I could conceivably start over Matt Stafford right now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because he just really lacks like that rushing upside, he just has to be a tremendous passer to make up for that deficiency. And it just isn't happening right now. So it's just really you're just talking like a very little amount of upside, and you're just not doing yourself any favors. Now, if we can see, Allen Robinson get more involved and Stafford's getting back to throwing like 3 touchdowns a game, that's a different story. But he's not even close.
Well, it was pretty bad this past Sunday. Is the first game that he's played for the Rams that he didn't throw a touchdown. And
Crazy.
so, I mean, it looks rough right now. And I mean, like, I would literally start Geno Smith over Matt Stafford if I had that option.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, it makes you it makes you sick to say that kind of thing.
It's
But
weird to say that, but
it is true.
It's where I'm at.
There's nothing I can really point to argue against that statement. You know what I mean? It's very fair. Absolutely. Yeah. So outside of Cup and Higbee, not looking great at this moment. For the Rams, for like starting options for fantasy. Then with the Dallas Cowboys, the Cooper Rush surge continues. It's pretty remarkable to see. It's a pretty cool story, despite not having Dak on the field. CeeDee Lamb, I'm still starting. Dalton Schultz, I'm still a little iffy on. I want to see him be on the field more and just get incorporated more. Coming off of that little short-term knee injury, but hopefully that doesn't linger, because he could be just a really nice volume kind of a playmaker for them, but just isn't happening right now. Michael Gallup, I think, is an interesting guy to take a look at here. Definitely good to have on your roster. I'm not sure if I would feel supremely confident with him as a starter until like the bye weeks, unless you feel differently. Where are you at with Michael Gallup?
No, I am basically with you there, but I think that that's an interesting name to go look for in your leagues. It is possible that maybe he's not on a team, depending on how deep your league is or whatever. So,
For sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential for Gallup for the rest of the season. So he's a guy I would 100% get on my roster if I had any opportunity to do that. Cooper Rush is a sneaky super flex play for me this week. I mean,
I like it. Yeah.
It's not one that I am pounding the table for, but it's not the worst. It's definitely not the worst. He's actually been putting up for some respectable fantasy numbers. So, yeah, I can imagine that being a play. Just to hit on what you were saying about Dalton Schultz, it's kind of frustrating me because I felt like he was kind of that solid tier below the elite, the elite tight ends, that he was kind of in the
That's right.
the upper end of that next tier down. I thought he'd be fairly dependable for you, and that certainly hasn't been the case. I mean, it is largely injury related, as you mentioned, but but yeah, he hasn't been getting the results that I had anticipated.
Definitely. Yeah. And then basically the last thing to basically touch on here is like Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. So I don't know. I still am a little hesitant against like the Rams defense as far as like Ezekiel Elliott's concerned. I still think he is still just a touchdown dependent kind of a fantasy asset. Um Again, he's on my Scott Fishbowl team, so he'll probably be someone that I'm gonna have to be that I'm gonna have to be starting there. But I'm probably not gonna like it.
Right.
Would you feel more confident starting him, or you just kind of like about it all? Is he kind of like an if you must type?
It's an if you must for sure. I mean, this matchup is just difficult. You know,
Yeah,
I don't want to start any running backs against the Rams when I have a chance to avoid it. So yeah, I mean, it's not favorable. It's not a favorable matchup in any way. But I can see how, you probably drafted Zeke, reasonably high. He certainly didn't go as high as he has been in years past, but at the same time, I mean, you drafted him with the intention that you're going to start him, so it might
yeah,
feel scary or hard to get away from him.
right.
But yeah, I mean, this is quite possibly his worst matchup of the whole year. Like, to be frank.
Yeah, definitely. And Tony Pollard, another one of these like zero RB like darling types.
Totally.
Obviously, if you drafted that way, you're kind of you kind of have to use
And it's
them, right? And just hope he like catches a few more passes than what he has in the last couple of weeks. But a very much a borderline start. Definitely someone I'm not hoping I need to start at this point. He's definitely more of like a excuse me, more of like a bye week fill in type, if I could help
yeah,
it. But yeah, I mean, he obviously has all the ability in the world, has all the potential in the world. It's just kind of yucky, just with Zeke in front of him, and just in general against the Rams. So I don't know, you might just want to like hold your nose and throw him in there, but tempered expectations for sure. I mean, PPR leagues is a little bit different, but yeah, it's still kind of iffy at best, even there.
yeah. I mean, I don't see a lot of separation between him and Zeke. I mean, these are both guys that like I'm putting in my flex if I feel like I have to. Uh, I'm doing it with low confidence on either player. So uh,
I like that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good way of
that's
putting it.
what it is, I guess.
For sure, for sure. All right, well that wraps up the week 5 slates. I just want to thank Dave for coming on again here. Please follow him at Dave Fantasy. You will not be disappointed by him or his content that he puts out. So why don't you just remind everyone all the things that you got working on here this year, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can find everything that I do if you do follow me on Twitter at Dave Fantasy. But I am writing a weekly column for In Between Media. That's in-betweenmedia.com. And so you can find that's every Wednesday. I incorporate my lifestyle advice with a parenting spin, because I am a father of twin girls, and I give you deep league starts for when you're hurting in your 16 plus team leagues. And then every Sunday night, I write a recap that gets published early Monday morning for 4 fantasy football. It's just a recap of the notable things that happened the Sunday before. It is one of the free articles on the site, so you do not have to have a subscription to read it. So, take that for what it's worth. You can read some of my biggest takeaways from Sunday.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a phenomenal site, obviously, and then they got themselves a good one, for sure. But yeah, I really can't state enough how big of a fan I am of just the in between media team and all their content in general. I always get a lot out of not only the great advice, but just like the lifestyle stuff. I just find completely fascinating that keeps me coming back. So glad to have another one of the team on the show. Of course, we've had Seth and Scott and Joe Griffin, and now we have at Dave Fantasy on from that amazing crew. So, Dave, once again, I appreciate you for coming on. best of luck with all your teams this week, and best of luck to the Steelers and Kenny Pickett. Hopefully, he can survive the next few weeks here. But yeah, appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate all your insight. It was fantastic.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, Steve. I had a good time.
Of course, yeah. All right, so I'm Steve. That's Dave. Thanks for listening, and keep climbing, everybody.